The Sporting Chance podcast is brought to you by Ashley Clark Falconry, makers of fine, exquisite leather goods. Use the code SportingChance10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
And also, Midnight Falconry, makers of the tightest braided equipment on the market.
Where can you find him?
Anywhere. He's all around us.
Instagram?
He's always with us.
He's with us now.
He's with us right now. Richard Moats is the owner. You can DM him on any social media platform, but his page and his business name is Midnight Falconry. Very good equipment.
And tell him Casey and Aaron sent you.
Yeah.
And also, North Mountain Goshawks. The one and only Seth Roy is breeding true parent-reared goshawks and imprints as well. I know you can't see it right now, but I'm holding one, and it's behaving like a dream come true. All right, welcome everyone to the Sporting Chance podcast. I am Aaron Kincaid.
And I'm Casey Everett.
And we will be shortly joined by Joseph Carter, the Mink Man. But first, we're going to warm up and catch up with each other about our week.
I don't know why that was so funny.
Oh, so Casey, how was your week?
My week was wonderful, Aaron. It was very productive. How about you?
It was okay. I'll say that much. It was all right. Working with this new goshawk, trying to take it easy. My process is a very slow one. It was literally 100 degrees outside and as humid as a jungle, so I'm in no hurry to get him out.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's not much cooler up here these days. It's like been in the 90s every day.
How's your imprint going?
She's good. This stage is pretty easy. It's just defrosting food, cutting up food, putting it in little bowls, stashing it here, bringing her there, bringing her here. She's tearing into the squirrel carcass and rabbit carcass now, which is cool. So like, for example, in the morning, I take her out and put her in the weathering area. She has like her, giant hood, which is essentially just like a dog kennel. And I put her morning food in there, and then I place, a rabbit carcass, with an open chest cavity, gutted, like frozen solid, like in the middle of the weathering area. There's a water bowl, there's a bunch of perches, and then I go to work. And when I come home, obviously all the food in the bowl is gone. And then you can see that the rabbit has been like plucked and like played with. And today was weird when I came home. This is probably a sign of bad things to come. But when I came home, from work today, and I walked out there to check on her, and I got a camera on her to make sure she's okay and stuff. And dude, she like freaking hobbles her way over to the carcass and just like jumps on it and starts
mean mugging you.
Yeah, well, she didn't really like mantle or get like aggressive, but it was like low key aggression. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's gonna be great. There's nothing you could do about it, really. I mean, I didn't. There's been no. I did the opposite of what I did last year, so I'm doing no association with food, and I'm just taking her to the food, and just a lot of stimulus. Like yesterday, my son put the sprinkler on, and I put her right like outside of where the sprinkler was landing, and then cut the dogs loose, and then put a squirrel carcass with a bunch of tidbits on it, and then went and got her, and then brought her over in the bowl, and then kind of made like some game calls and like some vocalizations, like as if we saw game, as I'm walking over to the carcass, and she's looking at my son running around in his bathing suit. She's looking at the water, and then before I could even put the nest ball on the grass, she was like jumping out of it to start eating the tidbits off of the carcass. And then my son was riding his little electric 4-wheeler around her, and she's just eating tidbits, and the dogs are running around, all excited. So it's fun. We're just, this stage is easy. It's just, just hanging out. She can't go anywhere.
You still got to be careful with what you're doing, though.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Can't do stupid stuff. You also, the stimulus. So this is the other thing, is like the stimulus is good, right? But if it's like just because your bird can't fly away and bait, or she's not hacking or vocalizing, doesn't mean you're not like traumatizing the bird by overstimulating them. So I think that's a big mistake that I've made in the past, and I see some people make. And you don't really know that you're making it. That's the tricky part. Is it's like, like I think I ran the lawnmower a little too close to Betsy last year a couple times, and like, yeah, she was in her nest and she seemed calm. But as soon as she could fly, if that lawnmower started across the yard, like 100 yards away, she would freaking fly away. You know what I mean? Like out on hack. So it didn't do her any good to have me doing that to her. I think she was just not enjoying it at all, ever. And then as soon as she got the chance, she would just fly away. So, you know what I mean? It's like it's a fine line. Not really a fine line. It's the opposite, actually. It's a gray line. It's a blurred line where you got to do stimulus, but you don't want to overstimulate your bird and traumatize it. And, they can take a lot, but too much, usually when they're eating uninterrupted, that what you're doing is good, right?
The male that I have right now, chamber raised bird, last bird I raised was chamber raised. He is, I don't know if it's the makeup of him and or that he's a male, but he is more high strung.
Yeah.
Much more high strung than she was.
I would imagine.
He is, there's a little bit of, I don't know if I would call it aggression, but he is maybe more defensiveness from his part.
That makes sense.
He definitely looks like he's ready to, he looks like he would flip me if I did the wrong thing.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he does.
What context? Like, what are we talking?
The other day I was feeding him on the glove, which is fine with chamber raised birds, a little bit of that. I think eventually, my opinion is eventually you should stop that. But while they're still afraid of you, I think it's good to feed them some on the glove. So I was letting him pull out a squirrel leg on the glove, and he would pull on the glove, and I just I had him pretty close to my face, pushing my limits, something you wouldn't do with like a passage bird or passage red tail or something like that.
Right.
You'd kind of avoid eye contact early on, and just kind of look at them out of the corner of your eyes. At least I would. And with him, I was just kind of had him fairly close to my face while I was sitting there, letting him pull on it. And he would pull on the food and eat it, and he would look up at me, and I could just see it in his eyes that every time he looked up at me, there was the thought of trying to pop me. He didn't like me being there that close to him.
Well, I mean, how close are we talking? Like 6 inches away from him?
Probably like a foot and a half, 2 feet, maybe.
That's not unreasonable.
I didn't think it was unreasonable, but I could tell he wasn't liking it, so I kind of took a step back from that. And
yeah, the kestrels are definitely more high strung, I've noticed.
And him being half North American, I think might have something to do with that.
Yeah, but it's good that you're doing it. Flying another bird, because now you're getting a whole different view, of the bird, and you get to do it again. Like you did it so well with the finished female, so now you get a chance to, recreate that, and see what the result is the second time. That's why I like getting new birds. People get triggered. It's amazing to me how triggering it is to
especially
people.
When you already have a good bird.
Yeah, I got messages from people like they're offended that I would get another bird. I'm like, okay, like why do you care? How are you going to pull that off? The same way I've done it every other year. I'm going to fly one, then fly the other one. What the hell? What do you think I'm going to do? Like, why do you need another one? Why not? Why not?
You don't need one to start with.
I don't even need to be a falconer. I'll just freaking go to the grocery store. I'll freaking go get a shotgun. Like, why not? Because I want to. Because it was on sale. That's why. Don't tell me somebody. Don't come to me and say you got an extra bird, because I'm gonna freaking. I got a problem. But yeah, people were like real weird about it. Very weird about it.
Yeah, nobody's given me any lip about it, but I guess I haven't even really posted it yet. I kind of don't want to, even though I'm talking about it on the podcast where, plenty of people are hearing this,
Right.
I'm a believer in keeping things close to your chest until the time is right to release it. That's all out the window now
Yeah.
that I'm saying it online. But yeah, we'll see. I keep my words soft and sweet just in case I have to eat them later. So
Yeah, same here. And I'm not offended that people would say something because two goshawks is a lot of work. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm not saying it's not going to be work. I've done it before, a couple seasons in a row. I flew two different goshawks, and like everyone says, one usually gets more work, more attention than the other. But
I don't think I've ever had a year where I've not had a new bird.
really,
Yeah, I love training birds. I love working with new birds.
yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It's so nice when you have one that's made. It's just like a machine. You just pull it out and go kill stuff. It's so nice. But there's something so much nicer when you make it from scratch and then you go out and kill stuff.
Uh-huh.
But ideally, in a perfect world for me, just for the listeners know, and if anyone's listening that was a little confused why I have a new bird, ideally, I just want two goshawks, maybe 10, but two. I just want two made birds, and if nothing, God forbid, happens to any of these birds, sickness, collisions, death of any kind, and they're both great, I'm just gonna fly them until the wheels fall off. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm gonna sell one. Although that did cross my mind. Fly them both, and whichever one I don't like, you know what I mean? Just put it on Raptor's Nest for like 5,000-6,000.
My concern with selling anything that I've dealt with and touched is everybody's always got something to say. So if it's not going perfect, it's your fault. They take no accountability in the process.
Well, I have video evidence of the bird's behavior. So if I were to sell Betsy tomorrow for $5,000, which someone would buy it because that would be a discount, first of all, the amount of work I put into that bird, I would be making nothing. I'd be making $3.
That's $1 an hour.
Exactly. So it wouldn't be for the money. It would just be for the simple fact that I could, buy another bird and be able to tell my wife that I'm not wasting money. I have to close my door. Hold on.
So yeah, new birds are fun. I'm always a big fan of it. I want to ask you something before we get our guest on, before we bring Joseph on. Today, a aspiring falconer was airing some grievances on Facebook about frustration about not being able to get into falconry yet.
Yeah.
And this person, I think, shows a lot of promise as a falconer, but is so early in the process. Like I've assured this person that, hey, just stick with it, show some dedication, show prove to people you got a good head on your shoulders. Come out for a season, meet different people, and you'll probably get a sponsor. Like that's not good enough for this person.
Do you know this person personally?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I took this person out hunting.
Oh, so why don't you sponsor them?
They live too far away, but I'm not going to sponsor somebody after taking them hunting one single time.
No, you can't.
Do you think falconry is too hard to get into? That's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Well, the answer to the question is it's not too hard to get into, but it is hard to get into. But I would say when I got into it, it was way harder. The barrier to entry was much higher. And that wasn't even that long ago. I mean, that was 3-4 years ago. No. It was like friggin' damn near 20 years ago. It was freaking ridiculous. There was nothing. There was no Facebook groups. I don't even know. I don't think Instagram was even a thing. There was no hashtag, nothing. You typed in falconry and like the old school Amazon website would come up to like buy a book. And that was it. Like there was no like YouTube videos or stuff. Like you may get a picture here and there or something, but there was nothing. And the only info that I really got was like the California Hawking Club. I think they had a website and they had like a practice test on their website that you could take. I remember the background was all brown and like rustic. And the questions were, I remember, dude, because I took the test probably legitimately. I probably went through that test probably 350 times. I took that test like literally 300 times.
I was so scared I wasn't going to pass the falconry test.
Yeah, how'd you do on it?
I actually got a perfect score on it.
Of course you did. You're smarty pants.
I'm a professional student, but our test is really, it's kind of silly. There's questions in it about like, what happens when a peregrine falcon, I don't know, man. It's stuff that an apprentice doesn't need to know.
Yeah,
I think the test should reflect like what an apprentice needs to know to get into it. Like maybe you could say which bird is more suited to take a duck, kestrel.
I mean,
then the problem is people are going to argue with that. You could say a kestrel, a red tail, or peregrine falcon, or all of the above. I mean, you'd want to say peregrine falcon, but then there'd be people who'd go, a red tail can take ducks too.
Well, they can, and they do in the wild. So that'd be like a trick question, and you could argue either way.
Yeah,
but I failed mine the first time, believe it or not.
Well, you were a little kid in your defense.
Yeah, I was trying to read it. I was like, what's the difference between a kestrel and a merlin?
Kestrel. But you were also homeschooled too, so that says something.
Bro, I was a good student, okay?
Apparently not that good.
No, because like I said, there was no practice courses. There was no pack. The packet didn't really have any questions in it. And I took it and I failed like by like not that much, like a couple points. And I didn't know the difference between a kestrel and a merlin. And then it was, now looking back, it was like super easy. It was just the flight style was completely different. So that was the answer. Was the flight style was more direct and pursuit oriented, and whatever the answer was. But yeah, the second time I went and I freaking aced it. But yeah, it was harder back then. Nowadays, you can like, if you wanted to, in one single day, you could direct message 1,000 falconers in one day and say, please help. I'm trying to be please help, and just copy and paste. And like, you could get a ton of information and a ton of answers. Like, I think the hardest part, and not to be like, like damn kids are always on their phone, but like nowadays, like I feel like there's a lot of entitlement. Like, you know what I mean? Like some people, like they expect, and they get it too. That's the part that irritates me, is there was no hand holding, none of that when I was an apprentice. At least my sponsors, that's the way they did it that way. Phil, he made it hard on purpose.
The problem is now is like, it used to be gate kept, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Now there's somebody who will take you on with no, they'll meet you at a picnic and you've never flown you have no experience with falconry, but they agree to take you on. There's always somebody like that who will do that.
Yeah. Or a phone call to a phone call. They'll sponsor you over a phone call. Because some people just want an apprentice because we're all guilty of this, right? Like you go through this phase, and I went through it, and it's a case by case basis. Like sometimes, like not a case by case, but like a day by day thing. Some days I'm like, I could fly I could fly any guy, any bird. I'm freaking, I know what I'm doing. But then like, dude, like the other day I got up and I'm like, dude, I hope this albatros doesn't grab me by my face. I hope I don't screw something up. I've flown, a few goshawks, like, but I'm still like, but like a lot of people, they go through this phase. I have 2 points to make. And the first point is, some people think that they know everything and that they don't need any help from anybody. And they feel that they want to sponsor somebody because they don't have anything else to learn. And they really want somebody, they want somebody like a pupil that they can teach, somebody that can kind of stroke their ego, make them feel good about themselves. And it makes them feel a certain way, right? If it's not that it's wrong or anything like that, but there's something selfish about it.
Mm-hmm.
On the person doing the sponsoring's part. Okay. And then the second point is, there was people that were gate kept 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? And they had to bust their ass. They had to really push, and there was falconers treating them like garbage. And let's be honest, falconers are not the nicest people at all.
Yeah, I don't think you should treat prospective falconers with disrespect.
Right.
I think that's messed up myself.
No, I agree. No, I agree. But I'm saying like where they won't give you the time of day. They're a little bit elitist. They're like a snob about it. They don't want to help you. So then you finally find somebody, you beg them to sponsor you. And then it's kind of like the parents where you got beat as a child, right? Your parents hit you with a belt and you ignore the fact that
it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle in the sense where, my mom beat me with a belt as a kid when I would do something wrong, right? And then I'm tempted as a father to say, oh, I didn't like, getting disciplined as a kid. I felt really bad about getting disciplined. So I'm not going to discipline my kid that way. I'm going to have, a long conversation about why my kid threw a rock through a window because he had a tantrum instead of putting him in his room for timeout or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the same concept where they say, I didn't like the way I felt trying to become an apprentice. People gave me such a hard time about it. I felt alienated from the community. I'm not going to do that to somebody. I'm just going to sponsor them the second they ask me. And I think that like the thought process is from the right place. But I think that ultimately it 1000% lowers the standard of falconry because you're not vetting people the way that I felt like people were vetted years ago, at least in my circles in the East. It was like a very intense thing. Like you had to get like not references, but like, do you have any interest in hunting? And if you answered that wrong and you said, no, I don't want to hunt, I just love birds, they would put you on a list in the back of their mind, like, screw this guy. He's not about it, even though he doesn't even know that he's about it yet. Like maybe when he gets the bird, he'll turn into a hunter and really get really into it. That happens a lot. But then there are the cases where somebody says that they have no interest in hunting, that they love birds, and they get sponsored. And then what do? They don't want to beat brush. They don't want to go look for fields, and they end up just doing nothing with their bird and then just fading off into nothing. You know what I mean? Which is not good for the sport necessarily either. So it's kind of like a good discussion to have, but I don't know what the right answer is.
It's such an investment of time if done correctly. Like my apprentice that I have right now, me and her spend a lot of time together hunting, and you have to enjoy the other person's company. I don't want to spend, 5 to 10 hours a weekend with somebody that I don't like, and then I think the apprentice needs to respect how much time you're giving them that you don't have to do.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know if falconry is too hard to get into. Sometimes I wonder, maybe the reason why it is kind of hard to get into in America, and it should be, is because we're privileged enough to be able to take wild birds. Might be a whole different story if you could go to the pet store and buy red-tailed hawk.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to pull a red-tailed hawk out of the wild, there needs to be you need to have done something to get to that point.
I agree 100%. We have a unique opportunity, and that's the thing. That's the conversation that keeps coming up is social media bad? Is this bad? Is this affecting our sport? Is this going to harm our sport? And I do think, I'm definitely low government in my personal view. I don't really necessarily trust them or like them, but I do think in this sense, having a regulatory system that forces people to jump through annoying hoops to get a license that allows you to take a wild bird, for falconry. I think that it's a net positive for the sport, and it helps keep it at a certain standard. But people can still game the system, right? I mean, there's people that have pages that just have owls, and if you click the link in the bio, it's like a step by step. Like this is like, to me, it's so like blasphemous, bro. It's so blasphemous. It's a step by step, like instructional, like page on how to say the right things to get sponsored, to get a red tail, to just do enough to get by that you can get an owl.
You know the best. You know what I
I'm
would tell
dead
those
serious.
people?
Go
I'd
ahead.
say save up $3,000 to $5,000 and buy an eagle owl.
I don't even. Can you? I don't know how it
Yeah,
works.
you can. Anybody can.
Okay.
Eagle
No,
owl.
I
Eagle owls
kind of
are
knew that.
treated exactly like parrots
Oh,
in
they
the
are.
same
Okay.
sense. Yeah, that you don't need any kind of license to have an eagle owl. And
I
I
think
guess
I
it would be
knew
the
that.
same thing for like auger buzzards. I guess European buzzards.
Sakers, lanners.
Yeah, all of those you could buy without any type of license. Which for people who don't want to do the work to be falconers, that's probably what I'm going to start telling them. Like, hey, if you don't want to put forth all that effort and you just want a bird of prey, go buy an exotic.
Yeah, but then we know what happens, and it happens all the time, and it happened recently, and I'm not going to say who it is, but they bought a $5,000 owl, and now it's flying around somewhere. Can't find it. So,
What state was that in?
my state.
Well, I know the zoo lost an owl.
Yeah, it wasn't the zoo.
It was an individual.
It was an individual, and I know this person, and we talk, and I don't have any problems with them at all. And their heart is in the right place. They just love birds of prey. They want to do education. They have no intention of hunting. They don't like hunting. Someone sponsored them, and I would assume that the person knew the intentions of the individual. I don't know, but that's like my point, right? It's like you either gatekeep too much or you don't gatekeep enough, and then you get this diluted nonsense that's going on with people, losing birds. And then, they always put in their title on their social media, falconer, licensed falconer. And it's like, yeah, great. It's good to say that you're a licensed falconer, but if you're not practicing, if you're not trying to practice to the best of your ability and you don't care because you just want an owl, then you're having a negative impact on our sport that we love so much. You know what I mean?
Well, it shouldn't be connected to the sport.
Well, it is because they put licensed falconer on their page.
Yeah.
And then they post, oh, I lost, little Cindy Lou Who, my beloved, whatever. I don't, you know what I mean? I'm just saying.
They need to drop that. Let's ask our guest.
There he is.
Welcome to the
Joseph.
Sporting Chance podcast, Joseph.
Yeah, check out my manly background.
Dude, that's
man.
awesome. Looks like my kid's room.
We were just having a conversation. I want to ask you the question because I know you practiced falconry at one point. Do you think falconry is too hard to get into?
I'm for small government. I think the government telling us what to do when they don't have a clue what to do. If the guys telling us and making the rules can't successfully practice falconry themselves, and they have no right to be setting the rules. And that's not me saying that I think falconers should set the rules, because falconry has a wide range of, from really cool live and let lives to complete psycho control freak types within the sport. So I don't think a falconer should be controlling what I do either. I say, you know what? If people get a bird, they don't take care of it, and it died anyway. And I know that's super, super harsh. It probably would have died anyway. Now, 80 to 90%, depending on the species, and obviously higher up they are on the food chain, the lower the percentage, die in their first year anyway.
Correct. Yeah. Good point.
So if some douchebag catches a bird, does dumb stuff, and it dies, that bird had a between 10 and 20, if it's a bigger species, maybe 30% chance of living anyway.
Right.
Like they have a better chance at surviving in the hands of a schmuck than they do if they were never touched. Now, that by no means am I trying to say that, like, oh, we should just not take care of them and not give them the best chance. That's not my point at all. I'm just saying the government, number one, isn't in a place to tell us what to do, because they don't know anything about it anyway. And then most of their laws are ridiculous. When I got my falconry, I don't know if each state does this, but in the state of Utah, you have to have an inspection. I assume that's
most states, I think.
standard.
Yeah.
So they inspected my stuff. My sponsor looked at it. He's like, dude, none of this stuff would work. You're not getting an eagle. Like, this doesn't work. I had like a swivel that was like made for a freaking horse, and like, I didn't know, and the leather and for the jesses was like what you use for a cinch strap on a horse. Like, they just didn't work at all. and the eyelets, you could like poke your finger through. Anyway,
Yeah.
my sponsor looked at it, he's like, dude, none of this stuff is even remotely useful. I mean, I'm proud that you like did research and tried to build it, but you're not getting a golden eagle. This wouldn't fit even a red tail. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I need to get the right stuff because my inspections come up. He's like, dude, just show it to the inspector. He won't know the difference.
That's funny.
So I showed him this bogus bullcrap stuff that would not have worked at all. And in some cases would have harmed the freaking bird, like the swivel big enough to put on a horse. And he's just like, okay. So what's the point of all the bureaucracy when it's some moron who doesn't know what he's doing anyway?
Well, what we were talking about was now it's showing the dedication that you're taking the sport seriously. It's not so much the government's the laws of the government. It's that as a sponsor, you want to know that the person that you're taking the time to sponsor is serious enough about it.
Yeah. I think really that's the big thing is the sponsor's the best. I mean, if you're going to control anything, I would say find some way to control the sponsors, because if they're going to have a legit sponsor, they should take care of the rest of the shenanigans.
Yeah, I've floated that idea amongst other people, like have a board of sponsors like in each state that are all respected and real hunters in the sport, and have them oversee who sponsors who and who apprentices who. And if there's something that happens, then let them kind of decide on it. Because I'm a plumber, right, Joseph? So it's the same exact thing in plumbing. I answer to the New Jersey Board of Master Plumbers. So like they can like garnish my wages, they can write me tickets, like they could ruin my life. They could take my license away. And they're just a body of plumbers that are given this power by the state, and they kind of handle, if I charge a customer like $7,000 to like fix a flapper in their toilet, like, and and some senile old lady, like, yeah, the Better Business Bureau is going to get me, but then the Board of Master Plumbers is going to get in on it, and I'm going to have to go stand before them in like a court, essentially, and answer why I charged that. And then I could say, oh, she had leprosy, so it was a high risk situation, and I went in anyway. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so I have to answer for it. So that's not a bad idea, Joseph, to have this like somebody overseeing the sponsors to make sure they do a good job with the apprentices, rather than just some guy who shows up in a khaki uniform to just kind of, you have a swivel. Yes, okay, they have a swivel, even though it won't work and they don't know what they're.
Does your muse have a window? Oh, yeah. It's got a window. Like,
yeah,
I had a really cool muse that didn't have a window, wouldn't have passed inspection, didn't have bars on the window. It was an indoor setup,
right.
So like I've had facilities that didn't pass inspection technically, and they're way better than a lot of the ones that do.
Yeah,
because the guy passing it doesn't know jack. He's got a checklist. And he's like, you're good, or you're not. It doesn't matter how good the setup is actually for the bird, and the person who made that window law,
right?
I mean, who knows if they even knew anything?
You would hope that they did. My opinion is that the government has to answer to their constituents. So they have to, when people like the Audubon Society who hate falconers, and they're not our friends, by the way, everybody, they're not our friends. The Audubon Society, who used to host hunts of birds of prey, by the way, and they used to give out awards to whoever shot the most birds of prey. So just so you know, the Audubon Society is a joke. I can't stand them.
How do you really feel?
They're so full of it. But
Audubon himself shot a lot of birds.
Oh yeah. So anyway, where was I going on that? My blood pressure just spiked.
You were saying,
no idea.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought too.
Anyway, it probably wasn't. Oh, that's what it was. They have constituents, and when the Audubon Society and all these PETA groups, they go to the government and they have their pitchforks and they say, these people are killing rabbits with hawks. It's evil. Why are they doing this? They can say, and they could just hold up the little form and say, well, they have to follow all of these BS rules. And see, we have this guy in a khaki uniform that inspects all their equipment. The birds have to be housed in the correct way. So that kind of gives us like almost like an insurance policy for the government to cover their ass. So when they're attacked or when it's pressured, they don't just ban it outright, because there's already systems in place that are supposed to protect the birds and maintain order. Essentially,
I would say, what, you guys like rabbits? I thought you liked hawks.
Yeah, no, they don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good way of thinking about it, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. It seems to me that the government, once something's in place, they say let's go with it, and it takes a lot of crap to change that. It doesn't matter how stupid it is. Like fur farming, because it exists, I can get mink with like no hassle from the government. It's too bad fur farming didn't encompass like every member of the weasel family, because then I could go and get all these different stuff. But now I'm pigeonholed to just mink, and why is that? Is purely just because, well, that's how it was going when the government was tightening its grip around our throat. Because back in the day, we could do anything:
Right.
shoot hawks, fly hawks, take their eggs, make a pet out of them, or any other animal. It doesn't have to be a hawk. Now they've just slowly closed their grip around our throat. And as they close their grip, there's certain things that are in place that they're like, oh, we'll just leave that. We'll leave that. Like, for example, we go through all this BS to get falconry birds. Do you know what it takes to own a federally protected freaking goose or duck? Nothing.
Really?
Nothing. I'm about to get a cackling goose. Do you know what I need? A receipt that says I bought it. That's it. It's a cackling goose. It's just as federally protected as birds we fly in falconry. In fact, one better. I could go and get a nene goose. Not only federally protected, but endangered. No, they're from Hawaii. They're endangered. They're federally protected in top of just the Migratory Bird Act that covers everything with a heartbeat and feathers, right? They are also federally protected in the sense that they're endangered. I could just go get one. Simple.
Well, you could also do that with quail too.
They don't have to go. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying you can do that with quail too. That it's a federally.
Well, they're not federally protected. Upland game birds are not.
But they're governed by laws.
Yeah, just by state though.
Yeah, I know in my state,
states just don't really care. They're like chickens, and sometimes they require something, but usually not.
Yeah, I had some bag pheasant, and the state that I live in, somebody mentioned to me, you should be careful because you got a couple pheasant in a pen back there, and in the state that I live in, you have to have essentially you need like a permit. You got to fill out a permit online that says like I'm housing pheasants on my property, and then you have to I don't think they inspect anything. I think it's just like you fill out the form, you sign it, they receive it, you pay a little like $20 permit fee every year, and then that's it.
Yeah, my state,
it's $5 for a game bird permit.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah. I didn't think it was expensive.
Here, probably.
My state, I have to buy like a 10-cent aluminum band and put it on the bird, and that's it.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah. What are you gonna do with the geese?
Oh, just for fun. So geese, they create very, very strong family bonds and pair bonds. And so if you imprint them on a human, they are like your best freaking buddy. Like they make dogs, like they're more clingy than a dog. They're the most bonded, clingy creature. I'm sure there's probably other birds that will do it just as much. Some of these like parrots and stuff, they'll pair bond really tight.
A penguin?
But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know that anything comes as tight as geese and like swan family. Like they will literally, they've had geese get injured and they get taken into a wildlife facility for helping them get better. And their mate will sit outside the window and communicate with them through the window. They will sit there at that facility for a month while their mate heals up. And then when they go to let that mate goose, his mate or her mate is out there waiting for him. And they get online. I'll send you a video if you're curious to see. But anyway, they create these really strong bonds, and they're just kind of cool. And so if you imprint one on you, it'll follow you everywhere, even as an adult.
Wow!
And you can go get in a paraglider and go flying, and it'll fly with you. You could get in your truck and drive, and it'll fly alongside the truck.
What was that movie that they did?
Fly Away Home.
Fly Away Home.
Yeah, that was a good movie where they got
That's legit. Like they will. I mean, obviously they can't be like scared of the craft you're in, so they might need some adjustment to the motorcycle you're driving because it's loud or whatever,
Yeah.
But they will just like stick to you like glue. And anyway, it's just kind of cool. It's just a dumb pet. So I'm gonna get. I tried to get a baby this year to hatch, or an egg to hatch to have the baby, and our season was really weird. The weather, so nothing was hatched this year.
Interesting.
So my buddy who knew I was trying to get some, he's like, dude, I got to get rid of my pair because of some life circumstances. He's like, do you want them? I'm like, sure. He's like, here, let me just hand you the receipt and you've got them. You know, that's all. They're just as federally protected. Oh, sorry, I went on a tangent too, even longer.
No problem.
My point was the only reason they could do that is because it was in place. But while the government was tightening its grip around their throats, there were people who, as hobby, kept wild birds of waterfowl. So they've got wood ducks and nene geese and green winged teal and every little duck you can think of. And it was just a hobby. And there was enough people doing it. So when the government said, now we're going to control this is already in place. We'll leave you guys alone. And now you can't have a robin. If there was a robins club of people who ran around with robins would be totally legal, to own. But because I wasn't in place, they couldn't,
It's a shame people didn't have crows and ravens.
Yeah, I know. That's what I say. That's
That's
such a shame. I think that's one of the coolest birds that we should be able to own that we can't, especially ravens. I need to shut up. You guys.
No, all right. No, you're good. You're good, Joseph. You're good. But
ravens are federally protected, and yet they're driving animals to extinction because they're so overpopulated.
Yes, they are.
Oh, I absolutely love ravens. So let me preface this with: I do not hate ravens. I'm not against ravens. I really wish they weren't protected so I could have one as a pet. To be honest, like that's how much I like them. But here's what's going on with ravens. So before we came in, ravens lived out in the desert in the lower 48, right? Living out in the desert or really, really rugged, inhospitable places. And they, in the desert territories, there's very limited food and very limited nesting sites, right? Few trees, few cliffs. They're limited on food, limited on nesting sites. Here we come along and we set up these strings of trees for miles called power lines, right? Crisscrossing the country. So we just quadrupled the nest sites available to ravens. And then we take all of our garbage and we throw it out in giant piles in the middle of the desert, far away from human as possible. Piles all over the place of giant heaps of endless food for the ravens. So the ravens now have quadruple the nesting sites and unlimited sources of food where they could just eat till their heart's content. So what have they done? Their populations have exploded. Way past their normal natural balance. And they're not just eating the garbage, they're also eating these little baby desert tortoises. And they've got all these, save the desert tortoises. Yeah, it's not us. We're not the ones killing the desert tortoises, you morons. It's the ravens who are federally protected. So when they reach out and they're like, we need to remove them from the federal protection, the Migratory Bird Act, they are overpopulated. They're causing harm. There's no reason for them to be protected. And then the other guys are like, but we don't want to lose control. We can't. Right. We've already got that control. We don't want to give up that control, and they won't. And it's like, look, they're driving animals to extinction. Well, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
We'll have government officers who are paid to shoot them or something stupid,
complete nonsense. Let the taxpayers pay to shoot them rather than have the taxpayers pay the government to shoot them. Wait, there's no season on ravens? There's no season on?
No, they don't even have I don't think crows there are. They're big enough numbers in certain places and cause like agricultural damage that they usually have seasons or something.
Yeah, Jersey
depends on your state. Right?
I think it's the legacy because to Joseph's point, ravens used to be creatures that were far removed from civilization. Now they've come to civilization because there's food. Crows have always been comfortable with people, so it's been a tradition.
And also, in part of the country, I believe they were driven out somehow, like hunting or something like that. So ravens, I believe it's in the eastern states, were driven to kind of a local extinction.
Well, I had one in my yard.
They were always had a strong hold.
I had one in my yard last week, jumping around. Dude, they're so smart. I pointed this out to my wife because my wife's like, "What's it doing?" And I didn't know what it was. There was a little bird, this super cool looking like blue bird. I don't even know. I think it's just called a blue bird. And it was harassing this raven. And the raven was letting it harass it. And then it was flying into the tree and then kind of watching the blue bird harass it. And then, dude, it was trying to figure out where the nest was. I realized that that's what I said. It's trying to figure out where the nest is hidden because the bluebird is harassing it and it knows there's a nest around somewhere. And
he's playing hot and cold.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, exactly.
When does the bird get more frantic?
Like, yeah, and it was literally right over my driveway, right on my deck, and there's a nest there, a bluebird nest, and it was literally right, like trying. I don't think it found the nest, but I realized what it was trying to do. But okay, listen, we got to go back. We got to go back in time. We got to start at the beginning. I want to know all about Joseph. I want to know. You're obviously the Mink Man. I think that's
wet your whistle.
We want to know what wets your whistle, and I think so. The audience doesn't know. Joseph is an incredible guy. He hunts things like we do with birds of prey. He uses a mink in the same kind of concept, as well as awesome dogs, well trained dogs, and yeah. So we're going to get into all that. But you were a falconer at one point, which we brushed on early. Do you want to talk about that? Did you fly birds for a while, or how long did you do it?
So I started out. Let's just talk about animals in general. I'll lead it into falconry. So,
okay.
I grew up. No one in my immediate family is an animal person at all. My dad, especially. My mom grew up with a cowboy, so she really kind of should be more of an animal person than she is. She kind of likes birds, but casually,
Right.
But I was born right off the bat, just obsessed with any living creature I could get my little hands on. So I was catching worms and keeping them as pets and anything I could get my hands on. So the older I got, the more complicated the animals were, merely because I was able to catch bigger stuff. So I went from worms to crayfish to turtles to hedgehogs. I lived in Denmark for a couple of years. That's where I was catching hedgehogs.
I was just going to ask, where are you going to catch a hedgehog around here? That's cool.
That was in Europe.
That's so cool.
But just basically the older I got, because I had no help at all. So I didn't, my little kids could go out and catch a raccoon, right? Because they got a dad who teaches them. Nobody was teaching me how to do this stuff. So I just had to figure it out on my own. I shouldn't say that. Once my grandpa took me how to catch pigeons. He taught me how to catch pigeons. You get a ladder and you climb up, shine a light in their eyes and grab them. He taught me that. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I was like, wow, now I can catch things that fly,
Yeah.
Because as a little kid, the traps you build are just stupid. You're going to put a box and a stick and they're just retarded,
Hey, don't hate on the box and the stick. I caught so much stuff in my backyard with one of those things.
I did figure it out. So I used a bird cage with the same idea, but the door swung in. And that worked because they could see the light out and they would fly into the cage. The box, they always went for the crack.
Right.
So I never caught anything with a box and a stick. Congratulations, you did.
I think I used a rabbit cage, and the rabbit cage, like you said, is clear. And I would put like a phone book on it and duct tape it and put the stick, and I'd run the stick up my porch up to my bedroom window. And then while I was doing my homework, because I was homeschooled, as Aaron was saying earlier, I would do my homework and I would just wait until there was a crap ton of little birds under there or a squirrel. And I would just pull it and I would catch a robin, a cardinal, a squirrel, a chipmunk, and I'd run out and let whatever go that I wanted to let go. And most of the time I just looked at them and just kind of looked at them. But go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go on. Keep going.
Yeah, I discovered the same thing. The cage works, the box for me never did, because it's solid and they just go for the light. Whatever it is, mammal or bird, they're gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I got older, I eventually had a falconer come to a Boy Scout or Cub Scout. I think I was Cub Scout. I don't think I was Boy Scouts yet. Anyway, some scouting type activity. And they talked about they had a red tail and a peregrine, I believe, some kind of falcon. But I believe my memory says a peregrine, which, it might have been a hybrid. That's so much more common than a pure peregrine now. They might have just called it a peregrine, or I might remember it wrong. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They had a long wing and they had a boodio and a red tail. And they talked about it and all the work it takes and all this. And they made the mistake of saying the age you could get a license, which I think it was 12, maybe it was 14. I don't recall, but they said it. And I'm like, oh, I'm almost that age. Whatever I was only a couple of years from it. And I'm like, Dad, I'm going to get a falcon. And he's like, nah, no, you're not. My dad was always like, I don't know about this. But I bottle raised squirrels, and I caught little raccoons and different stuff and kept them as pets. And everything I caught, for some reason, I was intrigued with like training it to do something. So like even turtles, I had little painted turtles. It's like, what are you going to teach a turtle? Well, I taught them to come. So I'd go in and they'd be in their aquarium, and I go, and they'd swim up to the top, and they'd like, and I'd hand them each piece of food. They'd snap, snap, snap till they could reach it.
That's
And I
awesome.
mean, I taught my turtles to come, and then my little pet squirrel, he'd be up in the trees running around, and I'd go, and he'd come running down, and I'd give him some seeds, you know.
Nice.
So I just thought it was fun, and I always kind of trained whatever animal I had. I never had a dog growing up. My dad wouldn't let me have a dog, and part of it was just kind of our circumstances. We were always like renting and stuff, and part of it was he was just like, you already have enough pets, you know, because I was always catching stuff. I would go and like play with the neighbors' dogs, and eventually I started training the neighbors' dogs, and the neighbors' dogs would listen to me and not their owners, and I always loved that. I was like, because I'm just a little kid. I'm like 10 years old, 11 years old at this point, and the adult who owned the dog couldn't control it, and I could. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So eventually, when I was 15, I ended up moving out and going to live with my grandfather, who's a horse trainer. So he was more along my lines, right? So his livelihood was animals. So as I would go out every summer and live with him for the summer, and then come back to school for the school year. And from like, I think it was like 12 or 13, I started doing that. And then finally, when I was 15, basically I just stayed out with him and didn't come back home. And there's a few reasons why, but just to keep it simple, that's just what happened to me.
Yeah.
So as soon as I lived with my grandpa, I could kind of do what I want as far as animals came. I was always being held back with my living circumstances and my parents. Oh yeah, you can't have this, can't have that. Well, my grandpa was like, yeah, get whatever you want. Like, it's just we live on a farm, right? Get a pet grizzly bear. I don't care,
Yeah.
So I was like, sweet, I'm getting into falconry. Like, boom, that was like the first thing I wanted to do. And I was living, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And so I was like, I'm going to get a hawk. And I got a book, falconry book called Falconry Art and Practice by Emma Ford. Have you read that one or seen that one?
I think so. I think I have that one, actually. I think
Casey has read no books.
I've read a couple. Come on, I've read a couple.
What are books?
I just look at the picture. Joseph, I just look at the picture.
That's actually a good one for pictures. They got a cool picture.
I think that's why I have it. That's why it's striking a bell. That's
but I read that book like cover to cover 100 times, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a hawk. And I think I decided I wanted a red-tailed hawk, and I was gonna hunt jackrabbits because that's what we had available. And so I was all set on that, and I was gonna go out riding my horseback, hawking off the horse and catching jackrabbits, and I was all excited about it. And I found a sponsor, and he
how'd that look? How did that go?
Oh, that was easy for me. It was the first guy I ran into that was a falconer. His name's David Dixon. At the time, he was the Utah Falconer president, or whatever it's called, president of the Utah Falconry Association. And I just went in. He was the first guy I could get a hold of that had a license. And I went over there and I was like, I want to be a falconer. And he's like, okay. And I was like, I need someone to sponsor me. And he's like, I don't have time. I can help you find one. I don't care. I just want to do it. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm not against sponsoring you, because he was pretty close to me. And he's like, okay. And so he ended up just signing my paperwork, being my sponsor. And that was about all he did, was sign my paperwork.
Okay.
I mean, no offense to him. He was a busy guy.
Yeah, right.
So I got my license, and I read like so much. But as you know, book knowledge only goes so far. So I totally screwed up my first bird. I was set on a red tail, and the year I went to trap one, every freaking rough-legged hawk in all of Canada moved to Utah that winter. And it was a pretty harsh winter. Maybe that's why they were down there. I really don't see them anymore. So I don't know if they've like been wiped out, or if they just don't normally come this far north or south, excuse me. I have no idea. But there were rough legs that winter. I was trying to trap. There were rough legs everywhere. It's like, and I had no help. So I'm like, okay, there's a bird. Stop. Get your binoculars. what is this thing? He got my bird guide book. Is that a red tail? I think it's a red tail. I'm not sure. Let's throw out a trap and see. So we throw out a trap. It isn't even going to catch anything if it was the right hawk, because the nooses suck and there's not enough and they're half falling apart. And anyway, long story short, I didn't catch a single red tail my whole first season. And finally, the season was like the last day of the season. And I'm like, I cannot catch anything. I did catch a red tail, and he got caught by like one freaking talon, and he went down. No. And it popped up and was gone. And I was like, no!
No.
And I don't remember catching any rough legs, so I don't think I actually caught them. I think they just wouldn't come down to the traps, or else I would have caught 100 of them, because I couldn't identify, from with my glasses. I'm like, what is that thing?
Right.
And anyway, so I finally was like at the last week of the season, because back then the trapping season was very strict. It was like September to January 30th or something like that. I don't remember. 31st, whatever it was a strict season. Now our season is almost wide open.
Wow.
But at that time, it was a very specific season. And I was on like the last day or the last weekend or something of the season. I said, I need some help. And my sponsor was like, well, I don't have time. Here, go out with this guy. So I finally, for the first, or no, I think I did have one other time I went out with a falconer. We just didn't have good luck. It just didn't work out. It was like a sunny, warm day, and all the hawks were just like relaxing in the sun.
Yeah.
And then finally, it was like the last day, and I went out with a real falconer, and he had a trap that actually worked. And we went out, and finally, I was just like, dude, we can't find a freaking red tail. Let's just catch a kestrel. I want something. And so we snagged a kestrel, and they were everywhere. Got my first bird. It was a kestrel, and I was really disappointed because I was set on a red tail.
Yeah.
But I got her, and I did my best to train her. Totally screwed her up, man. She was carrying like crazy. She was like super food possessive, like mantling, like horrible habits. Destroyed her whole tail. She had like no tail.
Oh,
like
man.
it was bad. Because I mean, you got to realize I have like almost no supervision. Like my sponsor is like, here's my bird. He's like, cool. That was it. Like that was the limit. He saw my bird once, and that was it.
Oh, man.
So I messed this bird up royal. Like it would see a perch and it'd be like bait into every perch, because he knew once he flew away, I'd get scared and call him back.
Yeah.
He wants to fly away so he can come back.
Yeah, do train.
I had him. He was awesome trained for recall, but like, anyway, it was a train wreck. It was a poor train. The bird survived. There's no harm to the bird other than feathers.
Yeah,
but his legs were in perfect health, and I got him recalling really good. And I got him catching all kinds of baggies, but horrible habits. So at the end of the season, and I knew enough to know that these were all bad things. I wasn't so ignorant that I didn't realize all of that was bad.
Right.
I knew it was all bad. I'm like, he shouldn't be mantling. Why is she mantling? Oh, it's probably because I did that. I shouldn't be like whatever I did.
Right.
And I understand her feathers are breaking. It's because of my muse has a ledge, and she's landing on it, and her feathers are pushing up against it. Anyway, I was I don't know if wise is the right word, but
Intuitive.
I had enough of I have enough intuition to realize all these things were bad. A lot of people that are starting out don't even know these things are bad.
Yeah,
like,
I was just gonna say that you had a lot of experience with animals, so I think you kind of maybe had a leg up on other people just getting into it, and you were able to kind of see the bird's behavior and say, I'm not the most experienced, but I know that that's not good, and then you try to make a decision. So how did you fix any of that, or do you just cut your losses?
I just started over.
Just started over. Okay.
It was the end of the season anyway. I could only, the molt came, and I was like, hey, babe, that was a fun experience. Little Miss Bird. What did I name her? Tigress, I think I named her. That was a fun experience, little Tigress. I'm going to fatten you up and let you go for the summer. I'm going to try again in the fall. And so the next fall, I got another one. And I did catch some game with her. It wasn't like a total bust, but it was like 99% baggies. That bird got so many baggies.
Right.
So anyway, my next bird, trying to remember, it was another. And I realized though, I had it in my head. I wanted a big, majestic red tail, and we were gonna go hawking horseback for jackrabbits. Well, after that season of half a season or whatever you want to call it, of flying my kestrel, I realized I didn't need a red tail. I needed a kestrel. That, I could go out and find some jackrabbits on horseback. You have to realize, too, I was so young I didn't have a driver's license. So all of my trapping, I was the passenger in a car. I couldn't drive. And I can't go car hawking. That was part of the difficulty of having success.
Right.
So I was like, man, I really need to stick with kestrel because there's game everywhere on the farm. You've got sparrows and starlings coming out your ears. If I go out and ride looking for jackrabbits, I'm going to play out that field within, if I'm very active, which I would have been, within a few weeks.
Yeah.
All of what I envisioned, as a kid in my ignorance, I'd be hunting that over and over and over again for years on end. No. I realized that doesn't work because prey, they either get caught or they get smart. And then you've got a field full of smart rabbits that you can't catch or birds. And anyway, I realized that with my first season, at the end of the season, I was like, I can't get a red. I thought I could because I had a field with rabbits. I don't need a field. I need multiple fields that I can rotate through so that the game doesn't get smart. So I really can't get a red tail. I need to get another kestrel. And so the next season, I was prepared for that. I caught a little kestrel again, and then from then on, I just basically stuck with kestrels or mini stuff. I did have a Sharpie. Here's the other funny thing. So this is how little supervision I was. For years, I thought I flew a male coot. And we're talking years after I've been a falconer. And just a few years ago, a falconer buddy of mine looked at that. He's like, that's not a coot. That's a female Sharpie. Like, are you kidding me? All this time I thought I flew a male coot. He's like, no, dude, that's a female Sharpie. So, aside from her,
I bet I know who that was that told you that. I forgot his first name. Paul. Is it Paul? What's his? He just flew an imprint Sharpie, and you guys are friends, aren't you? What's his name? He just raised an imprint. He just raised an imprint Sharpshin last year. Friends with Ben Woodruff.
Oh, yep, that's him. Yeah,
I know it.
I can't think of his name either, but I should know his name. I'm really embarrassed because I just saw him just like weeks ago.
You have that legendary trapping video with him, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is embarrassing. I just barely saw him like a week ago.
I do
that. You guys are great friends.
Yeah, we're really close.
Joseph, I have customers' houses that I go to like 4 or 5 times a year. I don't even know who they are.
Dude, this is driving me nuts now.
They're not even saved in my phone. I don't even know who they are. Every time they call me, it's like a new. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, yeah.
We'll find it.
Anyway,
go on.
He gave me a little telemetry deal. Just anyway, yeah. So you're right. He was the guy who told me, he's like, that's not a coop, dude. That's a female Sharpie. And anyway, she was cool. And then I flew almost all exclusively kestrels. I think I was at like 7 by the time I quit. I think I'd gone through 7 kestrels in a Sharp.
So how many years was that? So you were a falconer for a little while then. I didn't know if I realized
I started
that.
when I was 15, and then I kept doing the habit that I started. So when molting came, I just let him go and then started anew in the fall.
Okay.
So the first time I did it because it was like, dude, I have to start over.
John Griggs.
Yes.
That's
exactly who it was.
Shout out John Griggs if you're listening.
Sorry, dude, please don't be listening. He's my guy, Joe. I freaking hooked him up with a transmitter, and he didn't even remember my name.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Don't worry about it. So you were a falconer for what, like 5, 6, 7 years or something like that?
I don't know.
Or are you still a falconer currently?
No, I'm not anymore.
Okay.
I don't know. I lost track. I couldn't tell you how many years it was. I just remember the birds because I had them in a little notebook. And there were seasons where I'd lose them and I had to get another one. So I don't think it would have been as many years as I had birds. So it would have been less than that. So something less than 8 or 7 or whatever the number it was. So let's just say I had 7. Well, and the Sharp. So let's say I had 8. It would have been something less than that. Like
right.
6.
Got it. Makes sense.
So because I do remember vividly losing a couple. I was so sad. I had this one little male. I named him Con. Just a beautiful little kestrel, a little bright blue. You know, they're all beautiful, but some are more vibrantly colored than others.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
he was a hag, so he was just sharp, gorgeous, extra beautiful. And I had a hag female that was horrible and a hag male that was just a dream. And Con was a dream. He was like a pet. You know, people are like, oh, I'd like to have a falcon as a pet. It's like, dude, they don't like people. They're just there for the food. Con actually did like me. I'd free loft him in my bedroom and be reading a book. He'd come over and sit on my knee for no reason. Like
Oh,
he's
that's
got the
cool.
whole room. He could be perching, you know, on the different perches I had set up. No, he'd come sit on my knee. He was a cute little guy.
That's
And
awesome.
we had some fun tail chases out. We'd be out in the desert, and a little bird would pop up, and he flew all the way to the freaking neighborhood, and he caught it on someone's roof. And I'm like, son of a gun! And I'm like, knocking on their door. Hey, my falcon's on your roof. Can I get up there? They're like, what are you talking about, kid? They just shut the door. I'm like, okay, I guess that's a yes. And I climb up on the roof from the gutter and get my bird down. But
That's
anyway,
great. That's
you gotta
great.
remember, I was a
Classic.
kid, so like
You were a
dude,
real falconer.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But anyway, so so one of my birds, one of my better birds, because this was a little bit later. I'd had a few years under my belt at this point. I had some really cool birds. I would actually, so most people like kestrels, well, any bird, to catch them quick and be done. They don't like tail chases. Most guys, the Merlin guys, typically are okay with tail chases because that's just how Merlins hunt.
Yeah.
But you know, most long wingers, they don't want things to tail chase. Well, my sponsor had no experience with kestrels. He only had experience with Merlins. So he put it into my head that like that's how they're supposed to catch stuff is they chase it. So I actually got my birds through giving them successively harder baggies.
Yes.
I taught them to tail chase, and I actually could have chases where the birds would go out, like spot out and keep chasing it. Like it was pretty cool.
That is
and
cool.
Usually kestrels are like either I get it on the rise or it's gone. I actually got them flying really hard. It was fun. So sorry. Let me bring it back to me.
That's a good pro tip though for people. Increasing because like I fly goshawks. Other people listening may fly goshawks or other. Even it doesn't matter if it's goshawk or not. But when your bird knows no failure, they don't know that they can't catch it. And like what Joseph was saying is basically he would do a bag that was very short and close to him, that was easy to catch, and then he would slowly increase it, but all the time ensuring that the bird would always catch it while increasing the distance of the baggie, so that the bird, no matter how far away it was, would always think it could catch it, and then it would never turn off the gas until it caught it. Which is a good pro tip. That's pretty cool.
It took a lot of baggies, which I had like an unlimited supply of. I lived on a farm, I could just trap new ones, and so I actually would have a flock of starling. I had a big. It was a fox cage. I don't know why I told you that. You couldn't really envision it, but it's like anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's like a small chicken coop.
Your standard fox cage. We all know.
Yeah, your standard fox. Come on, you guys don't live around fur farms. What the heck? But anyway, it's basically kind of like a smallish chicken coop.
Okay.
And I'd have a flock of starlings in it, so I literally had unlimited baggies.
Nice.
And I would start out with their wings totally trimmed. They can't, a dog could catch them. They're just flopping on the ground all the way till you're just barely trimming their feathers, and the bird would just get more and more confident as you gave them a stronger and stronger bird. And then I'd also do one of my steps as I go in our riding arena, shut all the doors. And this thing's like a football, not a stadium, but like a football field. If a football field had walls and a roof over it.
Right. Okay. It's pretty big.
It's like as big, probably a little bigger than a football field.
Wow.
But, so I turn a starling loose in there, and that starling couldn't go anywhere. He just chase it in circles and circles and circles till it got done. But like you said, I got that bird uber fit and super, super confident. And they would just tail chase those starlings until they put in. And as soon as they put in, they're screwed. So like when they put in with like a Merlins, for some reason, they're just, apparently, I've never flown a Merlin. This is just what I've been told. So I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me. I've never flown a Merlin. But my understanding,
everybody will let us know if you're wrong. Believe me.
when they, my understanding, my totally ignorant understanding is when a starling puts in on a merlin, they're kind of at a disadvantage. When a starling puts in with a kestrel, they're freaking screwed because the kestrel's like the exact same size. So they're like weaving around through the bushes and like
Nice.
I've caught them in car engines and old tractors.
Oh my
and
God.
they just eventually they put into somewhere, and that kestrel just gets in there and gets them, and they're in trouble once they start trying to put in. They're in trouble.
That's awesome.
And so, and I don't even know that they're necessarily wearing the starling out. I think they're intimidating. What it is. I don't think it's this starling is physically exhausted. It's like, dude, this freaking kestrel is not supposed to be chasing me. Like normally they leave me alone, but he won't quit chasing me, and they finally get nervous and they start trying to hide, and then boom, it's over. Anyway,
cool.
It was a lot of fun, and it's a style of flight that I've never heard of anyone else doing. So I'm sure someone else has done it somewhere, but I've never heard of it. Everyone does the short, out the window, bam, on the rise,
Yeah.
and that's it.
That's a very unique style of flying a kestrel. So yeah, I've never heard of any. I've heard of people doing stuff like that, like here and there, but it sounds like you were doing it on a daily basis, which is very interesting. That's
most people.
Cool. Yeah.
Car hawk.
Yeah, every day. Like my bird, I flew my bird every day but Sunday. That was because for religious reasons. And it's interesting. I found out later that it's actually better to do because giving them that day of rest, they don't get midwinter anemia from constantly being at weight and constantly being exercised. They get that day of kind of fatten up and rest and relax.
That's why you got to have 2 birds, ladies and gentlemen. You got to have 2 birds, so you can give people
be like us. Have 2.
Yeah, no, Joseph. Because before we had you on the air, we were talking about I was getting a little bit of drama from people. I just got a new Siberian goshawk, and I already have a made goshawk that's excellent that I raised last year. So I'm raising another one this year, and everybody was, "Why do you need 2 birds? You already have a good one." Blah, blah, blah. So, but that's my point. So that when your bird catches something, and if you're like an addict like I am and you want to go out the next day, that's not always best for the bird. Sometimes you got to give them a nice big crop, let them have a day off, and fly the other bird. So, yeah, no, you're onto something there.
Nice thing with kestrels is you could give them a good crop, and if you're flying them hard enough, you could fly them the next day. I got my birds so on point, and they're being kept at room temperature, so it's not even outside cold being a factor.
Yeah.
My kestrels were all indoors, which I totally recommend. If you ever fly little micros like kestrels, don't keep them outside. It's so much easier to maintain their weight because it's a constant temperature.
It's almost a necessity to keep them in the house.
Yeah, it's almost a necessity because I don't really know. When I had my birds at peak condition, I don't think they possibly could have maintained weight. I would have had to fly them like twice a day or something.
Yeah, or go out and feed them twice. Yeah, go out and feed them again at night or something with a light, so they don't die.
Yeah, because they were so just like literally like I was just shy. I would actually let them crop up, but what I would do is I would give them tons of roughage. So I'd be like, here's the neck of the starling. Here's a whole bunch of feathers mixed into the liver. Like I would, so their crop would be full, but they'd have like a lot of bulk in there.
Oh, there you go.
That makes some sense. Yeah,
it kept them from being heavy the next day, but they got to basically feel like they were stuffed, almost stuffed.
Yeah, that's
interesting. That's interesting to hear about your falconry.
Yeah, I didn't really know that you had an extensive, not extensive, but you were a falconer for quite a while and you were really into it. So I didn't really know that it was that involved for you. So that's pretty cool.
Well,
thank you for telling us that.
I was obsessed, man. Like my whole when I graduated high school, I was like, okay, what career can I get in that'll let me have the most falconry time possible? Like that was how obsessed I was.
That's awesome.
We wonder that ourselves.
So what changed was a senior in high school, I moved near a mink farm in Lehi, Utah. There's a bunch of mink farms, and I was like, "Well, what's a mink?" I know they're a member of the weasel family, but that's kind of it. Like, what are they? And I was just asking people around the farm, the new place we'd moved. What are these mink farms? Big, stinky, long sheds. What are those all about? Oh, those are mink. They're really mean. They're really vicious. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, yeah. They're the meanest, most horrible creatures alive. And they just tell me these wild stories, some of which I'm pretty sure were total BS. maybe some of them had some kind of truth to them, but they're like killing small cats or killing small dogs and cats and goats and baby pigs
Goats.
and like all this stuff. And I have seen my mink attack a sheep before, and there are verified accounts of mink killing like fawns and baby deer. There was one mink in Europe that specialized on sheep, like not
Wow.
lambs, but actual sheep. And the guy was a hired trapper, came out to kill a fox. And he's like, dude, this isn't a fox. This is a mink. And he specialized on killing full grown sheep, according to this guy. I have no
How would you
So-
picture that happening? Going for the spine, the back of the neck?
just hanging on them until sheep are really weak. If you know sheep, they just kind of lay down and quit. And the
Yeah.
mink probably just ate them to death. Just like literally consumed them while they laid there. I mean, it would have been a fucking wild bronco ride when he got a hold of it.
Yeah.
But once the sheep kind of just laid down and gave up, he would just chew in and eat it.
Yeah.
And there's always a possibility that's a total BS story that never happened, because I've never seen that. And I own sheep and mink. So I've never had that happen.
Right.
And I own some pretty big, crazy mink. So there's very well possible it's cool.
How many mink do you have currently?
Just
out of curiosity.
11?
11? Oh my goodness. I thought you had, to be honest, I thought you just like would have one at a time, like kind of how falconers do.
I would prefer to. I would very much prefer to, but here's what I found out was that mink have very wide range of personalities. Like literally it's like switching species with each individual you get. And so if you have a specific goal, like, oh, I want to go hunt muskrats, and you get this mink, he's like, I don't like muskrats. I like fish. Like I literally had a mink that preferred to eat like snails and worms and minnows. It was just a wimp, just an absolute gutless wimp. It didn't want anything that fought it back.
Right.
And he was like, oh yeah, bunnies, I'll take a bunny. They don't bite me,
Yeah.
And then I had another mink, same gender, probably as similar as you could think of it, same gender, same age, everything. She didn't want little minnows or like small crayfish. They were just not worth her time. She wanted a big crayfish or a bigger, not, I shouldn't say big fish because people think big, but like big for a mink,
Right.
a bigger sized minnow up to a trout. And it would literally, it would swim through a school of minnows and like small crayfish and not even look, it's not worth my time. And this other mink would like obsess over little easy crap. This
That's
mink,
so cool, man. That's
it'd be
so
hunting
cool.
frogs. So I taught her to hunt frogs in the spotlight. So they learned that where the spotlight is, there's prey. And so you go along and then you spotlight a crayfish, you shine on it and you go, here is the sound I make. You could say whatever you want, right?
Oh, yeah, like we do.
Yeah. It's the same idea.
Same idea.
You can also toss pebbles, but obviously that might scare what you're trying to show them.
Yeah.
But pebbles is kind of how you start. And then they learn eventually you don't need to do the pebbles. You just say here. And then, so you shine the light, here, and they'll go into the light and they'll grab the crayfish, or they'll grab the bullfrog sitting on the shore, or whatever it is you're hunting. Or we go hunt kangaroo rats. It's this little, like a gerbil kind of thing out in the desert. You go shine a light on it, here, and it goes into the spotlight, catches the little gerbil thing.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, so she was so cool. This one particular mink, I'd be out hunting frogs, and I'd have a frog right in the light, easy to get. Here, and she's like, I smell muskrat. And she'd run past the frog, practically stepping on it, not even look its direction when it jumps in the water, and go off and find some muskrat to catch, which it might not even catch. It might get away. But she was so cool because she wanted that fight. She wanted that tussle. She wanted the bigger stuff. I want to go get me a muskrat. Screw these stupid frogs. Whereas the other mink, be like, she was scared of muskrats, like outright scared of them. And she would love to eat a frog or a snail or something that's helpless,
Yeah.
So back to why I have so many mink. So when you have that and you put in, and you know how it is raising an imprint. Okay, so you go get this baby and you pour all this time into it and you raise it all up and it won't freaking catch rabbits.
Yeah.
That's the most annoying fetching thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
You just spent, 4 months of your life to find out the bird sucks.
Yeah.
Right? And in the case of mink, you can't even really judge them until they're probably 6 months old, right? I guess birds, it's probably not 4 months. What would you say, 3 months? I don't know. What
I mean, I would
you
say
decide the bird sucks? What age would you say if you're flying it?
I think
depends on the species.
it depends on the species, but if you're talking about goshawks, then like I have a 35-day-old, imprint outside Siberia, and she's probably going to fly over 1,000 grams. If she's not going to catch rabbits, I did something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I did something wrong. But there will be definitely different personalities, because I did have a Tiercel that just was terrified of any kind of fur. He only liked feather. And it could have been a mixture of me and him. And then I even gave him to my mentor, who only exclusively flies goshawks. And he even said that he just needs little birds. That's what he wants. He just wants little birds like quail and pheasant and, like hen pheasant. He's not cut for the big Drake mallards or rabbits. He just wanted nothing to do with anything like that. So it does make sense.
Could you imagine that being like a 50-50 or whatever every time you got a bird? Like you pour all this time. So at what point did you realize this bird sucks? It's a waste of my time. It's like a year into it, right? Almost.
Not even a year. Like, is I get them in the spring, and by October, November, you're kind of like, yeah, this bird's not really. He doesn't really
Same
like
as
this.
me.
Okay.
I never raised any imprint, so that's why I asked. I always did passage, right? And passage. So with my passage hawks, I actually had a culling process. I was like, dude, you suck. Go catch another one.
Yeah.
So I didn't stick around because they were already adults hunting, doing stuff, right? You could very quickly man one down, get him returning. That's why I said I didn't just fly. Some of them I didn't just lose, like that one male I saw come out con. There were some I was just like, dude, this bird sucks. I'm gonna go catch another one. And you can catch 2 a year.
I know guys that, especially micro people that fly a lot of micros. I won't say their names, obviously, but I know that they'll come home. They'll go home with multiple birds after a trapping session. I'm sure a lot of falconers do that, and then you just kind of over the course of 24 hours or 48 hours, you just toss this one, toss that one, and I like this one.
I think I kind of did that once. So we had a 24-hour at the time. It was like a 24-hour or 48 hours or something to band it.
Right.
I think I did that once where I brought one home and I was like, and then I didn't band it. I just turned it loose. I think I did that once, but that's like gray area.
It's a gray area, and like with a micro, like a kestrel or a merlin or a sharpie, in 24 hours, I mean, the thing's supposed to eat twice pretty much. You can figure out what bird is kind of getting the idea of it. I mean, I have merlins. I'm driving home from the freaking beach, and they're eating on the glove, like on the ride home. The 3-hour drive. You know what I mean? And then you got others that are just a spaz for 15 hours, 12 hours, and then they finally bend down to eat. They have to. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, very interesting.
I don't think any of those. I think I did that once, maybe twice, but I wouldn't have counted that towards my 7. It was ones that I actually flew. But I had a haggard female that wouldn't touch a starling. I literally could put a starling, her on top of it, a dead starling, and she wouldn't even pluck its carcass. She's like, what is that thing? I had to put meat into its feathers and like smush it in there to get her like picking at it. Yeah. Oh, now I'm going to pluck it. Now I'm going to eat it. She's no interest. And I was like, yeah.
I think you can definitely get a passage bird and definitely a haggard bird that has specialized some sort of prey that you're not interested in.
Yeah.
And that's just
I had a passage. I had an early caught passage who was just obsessed with grasshoppers.
Yeah.
He was just so lame. In fact, I think he had something. Like he just wasn't right. He just didn't care about coming, about hunting. Like his drive was just so low. Now that I'm talking about it, I actually think I had a couple birds I did that with. I think it was more than 1 or 2. Because now I'm already up to 2. And this is all years ago. Like, how old am I now? I'm 40 almost. So yeah, I mean, this is like 20 years ago. So if I've already got up to 2, I'm pretty sure there was more than 2. But anyway.
No, we're not.
So with passage birds, you can figure out real quick if they totally suck, turn them loose, move on, and get another one. But when you're with an imprint, like what I'm doing with the mink, or like what you're doing with your goss, by the time you figure it out, they suck. You've poured so many hours into that animal. It's ridiculously frustrating. And so that's what I was doing with my mink. I didn't know if they sucked till 6 months later, and who knows how many hours.
Right.
Like, there's no way to even calculate the hours you've put into that animal. And you're like, this just bites. When you get that one, and you got to wait till next spring before you could get another. So it's not even like a dog where it's like, oh yeah, I put 6 months into a dog. It sucks. Well, let me go get another one tomorrow. No, you got to wait for the breeding season, right?
So are you going to these farms and and you're picking out like baby mink that they're breeding there and you're just purchasing them? Like, how does it work?
That's how I started. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just go pick one out and I'd raise it up and it'd be what it is. It'd be great. It'd be horrible. It would be somewhere in between, whatever it ended up being. And I got tired of that like randomness of having no clue what I'm going to end up with. And so finally I got one that was just right. That female that I told you about that would pass up frogs to go find a muskrat.
Yeah.
I finally reached that like epitome of mink. And when I lost her in an unfortunate accident. I was out hunting and I had her on a leash and I was on a bike path and someone came around the corner real quick and startled us both. And I kind of loosened my grip from being startled and the mink shot off into the weeds and never saw her again.
Really?
And
that easy?
It was big, tall weeds.
But I'm saying like there's like you don't have a like we got to get into this, man. We got to get into this. Well, go ahead, Aaron. I know you had a question.
Yeah, you have a recall, but recall only works if number one, they're not scared, right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine a big old semi-track scares the living daylights out of your freaking passage goshawk? Dude, by the time he stops being scared, he's a mile and a half away, right?
Right.
And if you never saw it again, you may never be able to recall it.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you can't put telemetry on a mink and be hunting like small animals in tight holes because anything that blocks their ability to squeeze is going to prevent them. And I was hunting chipmunks, an animal is already too small for the mink. So what he would get in is like rotten logs where the mink could fit as well. If he got down an actual chipmunk hole, he was gone. Right. So we needed every inch of squeezing we could have. So there was no telemetry or anything on the mink but the leash and the harness that I had on him at the moment. And when we started hunting, we'd strip her naked, turn her loose. And I mean, even a collar without a tracking unit would have been too much. It would have been preventing her from fitting somewhere.
Makes perfect sense.
So anyway, so I've just got a leash and a harness on. And when they scared, I mean, she was scared. How long is it going to take her to calm down? And how deep is she in the weeds by the time she calms down?
Right.
And mink aren't like a bird of prey that's sitting up on a tree, can see you from a quarter mile away, and you blowing a whistle and swinging a thing. No, they got to be pretty close.
Right.
Their distance for recall is pretty small because their ears, they're going off of pure hearing, which it's kind of hard. Sounds echo. They're always down in stuff. They're not out in the open where they can hear you like a dog.
Right.
They're down in something, so this sound gets muffled very quickly. And then they're just not, frankly, that driven to come to you unless you got a really, really solid recall on them. And like I said, she was just afraid. And who knows when and if she got tangled. She might have been right there trying to come. Stuck. Who knows?
I don't even want to think about that.
It was a nightmare. Anyway, so when I lost her, she was like the epitome of mink at that point in my life. And I was like, dude, how many mink did I go through to get her? I'm going to have to do that again. It's just freaking roll of the die each time, whether I get, her name was Fang, whether I get a Fang or whether I get a Thiomba. She's the one that would eat freaking snails and worms and crap. I'm like, what the fetch? I have no idea if I'm going to get a Fang or a Thiomba next time. This is so frustrating. And so I was, at that point, I decided, you know what? I can't play this game anymore. I've got to up my odds at getting a good mink, especially because I was really set on what I was going to hunt. It wasn't hey, let's just go catch what we can catch. I was like, I want to get muskrats. I want to get brown rats. I want to get squirrels. All those things bite. So it requires a certain temperament to handle.
Right.
So I went to a mink farm and I went through an entire shed, 700 females and 700 males.
God.
And I tested them because they're all in these little cages. So I'm just going up and down and I'm testing them. I had a muskrat pelt, and the ones that acted the most, they really wanted it. I'd pop open the door and see what they do. Some of them, it's just like a dog in the fence. They're bark, 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 open the door and they don't do anything, right?
Right.
Same thing with the mink. They act all hot and bothered while they're in the cage, and you pop open the door and they're like, whoa, okay, maybe I don't want to grab that.
Time to harvest my fur.
Others would latch on and hang on to the muskrat. And so then I just figured out a way to test them. And basically what my test ended up being was, okay, Are you showing enough interest through the wire? Great. Open the door. What do you do now? Latch on. Hey, can I pick you up all the way out of the cage? Great. Can I touch you all over? Great. And the ones that passed my test, I would turn their little breeder card and I just went down the line. And then I'd come back to the ones that passed and I basically in steps made it harder and harder until I got down to 20 females and 20 males.
So you're essentially taking a passage mink, like a full grown mink.
No, you would call it a chamber raised mink.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, a chamber raised mink.
That's hilarious.
And they were adults, and which I'd already done that like a bunch.
Yeah, I saw some of your videos. They were full adults, and you kind of manned them down and trained them.
And that's fun. The downside is there's really no relationship, which I enjoy that part. It's just like a hawk, you know. They're just there because you call them and give them food, and you take them places to kill stuff. They don't really like you at all.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the bonding process of starting out with a baby. And it was kind of almost like a hawk dog, right? You've got a little bit of the dog, like buddy aspect, and a little bit of the hawk, well, a lot more of the hawk, wild animal, hunting, doing their natural thing. So it's kind of a cool mix of the two worlds. And I was so into having a little bit of both that I really liked doing the imprints. But like I said, the risk of the imprints was I had no idea what I was getting.
Right. Yeah.
So I went through, picked 20, brought them home of each gender. I did them one at a time, so I didn't have to do it all at once. So I picked all my females, brought them home, went through those 20 and got them in real life hunting situations, gave them a ton of baggies, basically. But I also took them to huge rat infestations and got them out ratting and just got them one right after another on a bunch of stuff and then filtered them down to the best 4 females. And then I took the ones back that didn't make it, give them back to the farmer. And then I did the same thing with males, got them my best 20 or whatever. I don't remember if the males was an exact 20 though. It might have been a slightly different number. It might have been like 14 or something because I needed the cages for the females that I already had. So anyway, I got the males whittled down, brought the males, did the same thing, So I got it down to 4 and 4 of the very best of the best that I could find on the farm. And then I bred them together. And every litter I had, I would filter through them, keep the very best 1 or 2 of each litter for the next generation and such and so forth. And that's why I have so many mink. At one point, I had way more than now.
That's so cool.
But I kind of got a little overwhelmed. Breeding project is a little tedious. I don't really like the breeding aspect, but it's kind of a means to an end, which is to be able to raise a mink and have a good confidence that, hey, I'm putting time into this animal and he's probably going to be dang good because I know his dad, granddad, and his great granddad, and I know and mom and such, and I know they were good, and I know these were their strengths and weaknesses, and so combining this guy's strengths with this guy's weaknesses, I have a reasonable idea of what this kit is going to end up like. And it's a lot better than just kind of close your eyes and pick at the mink farm.
Right. Yeah.
So Joseph, you got started with this, but you didn't elaborate. I think we kind of got you distracted.
Oh yeah.
So how did you get started doing minkenry?
So I was a falconer, like I said, living around mink farms. What is a mink? Oh, they're the most vicious, horrible creature alive. You can't tame them. You can't train them. They just kill stuff. And I'd be like, well, that doesn't make sense. What if you got one as a baby? Oh, they're mean from babies. They kill each other in the litter and fight with each other. I mean, they're just vicious from birth. And of course, a lot of this is exaggerated. It's not 100% true, but that's what I was told. And I'm talking to guys who are like 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation mink farmers. So like you would think if there was a way to do it, they would have figured it out. And so they're like, man, it's just impossible. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. I've tamed and trained so many different things. I think I can. And like I said, I'm a senior in high school at this point. So I was too busy flying a hawk to really mess with it. So I'm flying my hawk. But as you guys know, molting season comes around. And for me, that's not only a downtime because my bird's molting. I let mine go, start over every year. So I'm all of a sudden, spring comes, late spring, and I'm like, man, I'm bored. I don't have a hawk. So I want to get me a mink. I want to try this whole impossible to tame, impossible to train thing. So as soon as the falconry season was over, so like March or April, whenever I decided to turn my bird loose, I'm on the hunt for a mink. and none of the mink farmers would let me have one. They're man, he's just gonna eat you. And just, I don't want, they wouldn't help me out. So I was waiting for one to escape and be running around, which happened all the time. So I was looking and looking, and finally one day caught me off guard. I'm just out walking through a hayfield with my dog. We're out hunting. I had a little border collie, and we hunt is a very loose term. I can't tell you what we were hunting, but anyway, it's not socially. It's socially frowned upon.
We'll bleep it out.
Well, socially frowned upon. That's what this whole show is about.
Yeah, we'll bleep it out.
Anyway, so we're out walking the fields. I'm just going to skip that together.
I'm assuming it was
raccoons. What are you talking about?
If it was, we'll send you a medal. Please kill them all. We should make a T-shirt, Aaron. I was thinking about this. We should make a T-shirt that says kill your local.
Oh God,
we got to do that.
This dude was telling me he said he started the unofficial chapter of Unlimited.
Oh, and, dude, that's so awesome.
He said a little boy came over to his house and asked if he'd seen his. He described it, and he said, "I don't know. Go check the pile in my backyard."
Yeah, every should be shot. I don't care. I could care less. It boils my blood. But sorry. Go ahead.
I was hunting raccoons.
You're hunting raccoons.
Okay. Raccoons with my cow dog. So while I was out there, lo and behold, there's a mink just wandering around in the hayfield in broad daylight. I'm like totally unprepared. I'm like, what do I do? And like I said, it's springtime, so I have a jacket because it was still cool enough. I had a jacket on, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And I saw one the mink farm had thrown some mink boxes over the fence, and they're just like, they look like a giant birdhouse, just wood and have a hole in the middle. And then instead of a wood top, it's a wire top. But basically, other than that, it looks like a birdhouse. So I grab one and I'm like, well, maybe if I startle it, it will try and hide in the only hiding place it can find, and it'll go in this wooden box. So I'm just trying to think of, how can I catch this wild animal? So I go over there as close as I can get without startling it, and I put the box down, and he walks right up and goes in the box. And I'm like, well, that was fetching easy. So I pull my coat off and I shove it in the hole because, like I said, that got a wire top and then just a birdhouse looking hole. So I shove my coat in the hole so he can't get back out, and I go running home with this mink in a box. And I was so excited. So I put it in a horse stall, and I'd heard all these crazy stories about how vicious they are. So I turned it loose in a horse stall, and I've got like 4 pairs of pants, my cowboy boots, which go up, almost not quite to my knee, but mid shin. And I got my cowboy boots on, and I got like 3 coats, and I've got like 3 pairs of gloves, and I'm like, I look like the kid from what's that movie called? You're gonna shoot your eye out. The Christmas Story.
Christmas Story, yeah.
Yeah, little Ralphie, I think. Ralphie, and he like gets stuck. He looks like a turtle. He can't get out. So I look like Ralphie from the Christmas Story, and I come in there, like, I don't want this mink to hurt me, and it just like runs around in circles and avoids me. And I'm like, that's not very cool. Like, I thought you were supposed to attack me. So I eventually, I'm like, well, what can I do? And I'm like, well, I don't want to piss him off. So how could I handle him without scaring him? And I just was like, well, I'll do like I did as a little kid when you have a pet gerbil. You let it run from hand to hand.
Right.
You don't hold it. You just let it run.
Yep.
Like that. Like
monitor lizards. That's good for monitor lizards too. You never grab them.
Yeah, you just kind of let them, if they run, and then they're jumping. So sometimes you're going fast and furious, but sometimes you're just like calm. It depends on how frantic they're trying to get away. So I learned that as a little boy, handling little pet chipmunks and hamsters and stuff. You just do that, and it doesn't freak them out. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'll do. And so I'd put my hand in front of it, and the other hand, I'd kind of guide it over my hand. And when he stepped in my hand, I'd pick it up and try and get it. And then I'd jump down. And I'm like, okay, and I'd start over again and do that. So finally it got tired, and I'm standing there holding it. Like, oh, this is so cool. I'm holding it. And then he'd come back to my face. I'm like, oh, no, this is not cool.
Did he try? He tried to go after your face?
Probably not. He's probably just running that direction. But in my mind, he was like going to eat me, And I'm
right.
like, ah!
Right.
Anyway, and then he finally got tired, and he'd stand there around. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Anyway, long story short, I got this thing hand tamed within, I don't know, a couple weeks, couple months. I have no idea on the time frame. I would be guessing. But over time, I got it hand tamed.
But what does
Got a
that look?
harness on
What
it.
does that look like? What does that look like? Like you're going in there every day and you're essentially manning it down.
Yeah, same thing as what I just described, just over and over and over again till he quits freaking out and actually lets me pick him up.
And then are you doing like food reinforcement and stuff like
At this
that?
point, no.
Okay.
Eventually I did, but at this point, no. I was just basically trying to get it to let me hold it. And then once it would let me hold it, then I was like, okay, well, I need to teach it to come. Because I was just, like I said, I automatically like, oh, I got to teach it to come. I don't know why I thought that was necessary. Like I wasn't planning on hunting with it, but I thought, oh, I should teach it to come. So I thought, well, I don't want to put food in my hand and have them associate my hand with food. I'm thinking like a falconer, right? You don't want to get them, attacking something you don't want them to attack. So I was like, so maybe I should use kind of something that's totally different from my hand. So I was like, oh, if I put it in the bottom of a cup, and he's sticking his head down in a hole and eating it. He's not associating it with my hand directly. It was totally unnecessary. But in my mind, like I was thinking like a falconer, right? You don't want them, like if you've ever dealt with birds like that, that'll like, not that I had, because I didn't have imprints, birds that are sticky on the glove or get really obsessed over stuff. Because I'm picturing it like just an insane goshawk type attack, Cooper's hawk type mentality. So anyway, I do all this unnecessary stuff, and I teach it to put his head in the cup and eat the food, and come to me and let me hold it and all this, and then eventually I get a harness on it. And like I said, I have no idea on the time frame. This could have been weeks. This could have been months. I would just be guessing if I told you, but it was less than 2 months, let's say.
Right.
I eventually get it to where I trust it. I never really hold it, make him mad. I just let him walk from hand to hand. And once I got a harness on, I could take him out, take him for walks, and pick him up. And I'm so proud of myself. And one day I run into this mink farmer. I'm like, look at this. I got a mink, bare hands. Like, oh, it's impossible. And I'm doing it. And he just totally rains on my parade. He's like, well, if you're going to tame a mink, it would be a blue one. Because it was a blue, what they call blue mink, like a grayish color.
Okay.
The blue ones are the nicest of all of them. And I'm just like,
of course.
Yeah. I did this impossible thing, and you're just raining on my parade. So I'm like, okay, well, what's the meanest mink of all? What's the meanest color? And he's like, the black one. You can't tame one of those. You'll never have success with the black one. So, of course, what's my next goal? I got to get a black one, right? Well, this blue one, unfortunately, that blue color also is associated with bad immune systems. And it's very common for them to get like abscesses and different immunity complications and just die on you. Okay. And that's what happened with her. She was, I don't remember how long I had her, but it wasn't more, it was less than a year. However long it was, like I said, this is 20 plus years ago. Okay. This is 2003.
Yeah.
Hard to remember. So however long I ended up having her, it was several months, many months, but less than a year. She ended up getting infection. It got out of control. Nothing I could do help. And I ended up having to put her down. It was just really bad. And like I said, it's associated directly with that phase.
Okay.
So I was super disappointed, but I'm like, well, hey, look on the bright side. Now I get to try this black mink. So then I'm on the hunt for a black mink. One day, one of the neighbors called. I quickly became known as the mink guy because I'm out there everywhere with my mink on a leash. And so they called me up. Hey, there's a mink in our garage. Can you come help us get it out? I'm like, yes. I'm so excited. Because it was pretty soon after she died. I think it was only a matter of days or weeks. So it was like perfect timing for me. So I go running out there, got a little live trap, catch this mink, and lo and behold, it's a black one. Yes. But my stupid self, I thought, well, I had such amazing success the first go around. Maybe I should try a totally different method and see if it works better. So I did what I want to call what could be called the falconry method. So what do you do when you catch a bird of prey? You cast them, put jesses on them, and you sit and you hold them, holding on to the jesses, and make them sit on your glove for hours on end while you're watching movies or reading books or whatever. It's something really quiet and non non-stimulating, right?
Right.
So that's what I thought. Oh, I'm going to do that with my mink. So I catch it, hold it still, force a harness on it, and then hold it on a short leash on my glove so he could sit on my glove like a little hawk. Oh man, he just just like a freaking Tasmanian devil, just sat there attacking me and attacking me and attacking me and attacking me, and it was just the stupidest idea I ever come up with. But I mean, it works beautifully for falcons, right? Like birds of prey. You just sit quietly reading a book, and they'll bait you gently, put them back on the glove, and they sit there all scared, not even standing, and roll off, and you gently back, sit and quietly read a book. I mean, it's a beautiful falconry, but for a mink, it just pisses them off. Them being confined and tied. Like even if you could have got the harness on without holding them, somehow just magically had it appear on them. Just the fact that you're holding them in place just drives them nuts. So anyway, I was like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
I should go back to the original idea I came up with. And she was actually a totally psychotic individual, regardless of what I did to her. Had I done everything right, she was a little screw loose. So even though she'd been raised on a farm and see people every day of her life, she was so nervous, she'd be in there hiding in the box. And like, if you wanted to see her eat, you had to like peek around a corner and like catch her unaware. She'd sneak out, grab the food, and run back in the box. And like, she'd be out there swimming in her little pool, and you'd have to peek out and watch. And as soon as she saw you, she'd go in the box. Like literally, I've seen wild caught animals calm down better than she did, and she's been in a cage her whole life.
Wow.
So really, she had a screw loose regardless of me doing all of the wrong things. And pretty soon, not too long after getting her, I saw some boys out in a wood pile poking sticks down in the pile, and I'm like, I'll bet those kids are trying to kill a mink. And so I go out there just to see what they're doing. Well, what are you boys doing? And they're like, we're gonna kill a mink. And I'm like, no, you're not. Get out of here, guys. Go play. Go do something better with your time than killing a mink. And I'm like, oh, they go off and I look in there and I'm like, well, I can't
You're
leave
lucky
you
that
here.
wasn't today. They'd sue you or something.
And I was like, well, I can't leave him here because I know those boys will just come right back, you know? So I go back and get me a live trap and catch him. And it's a male mink. This is the first male I've dealt with. And he's also black. And I'm like, you know, I should probably just get a fresh start. I kind of screwed things up with that mink. And she kind of seems to have a screw loose anyway. Her name was Taz. I'm going to start fresh with this new one and go back to what I did with the first one. But this time, I think I'll do a little change. I'll add food. So I'll add food and that, like, you know, gently pick them up without scaring them method. And I found that was, you know, that was the perfect combination. I wasn't constraining him. I wasn't restraining him. I was being calm and peaceful, and I was offering him food. And that made it even quicker that he got used to me. He tamed down and he became a really cool pet. His name was Rascal. And he was really smart and clever. Unlike the other mink, he liked to play with stuff. He played with like everything. You put a pebble in his cage and he'd play with a rock. Like you put a cup in his cage, he'd play with a cup. Like anything unique, even remotely different from his surroundings, he'd like focus on it and play with it.
That's cool.
And I set up a fish tank in his. He was in the what used to be my starling cage because this is off season. I don't have a bird, so I had him in the big starling cage, the kind of small chicken coop deal, and I'd put a big old fish tank in there, stick fish in, and watch him swim around and catch them. And
that's cool.
And basically, I got attached to this mink and started to like him as a species. The ones before, it was just kind of like a challenge. Like, I could do this thing that no one could do.
Right.
Him, it was like, dude, I kind of like you. You're like a cool little creature. You're really smart. And you seem to kind of almost like me. And like, you're just cool. I'd like open the door and like pet him and he'd stand there and look at me and he's just cool. So I was like, you know, I wonder what I could do with this little guy. Like, they've got so much fire and you know, ferocity. I wonder if I could do something. And watching him catch the fish in the tank was the coolest thing in the world. I was like, I wonder if I could just go catch actual fish. And about that time, I was getting back into falconry, so I was, it's the season come around again, and at that when I had him, and so the first part I had him was just before falconry season, and then after I'd had him for a little bit, I'd gotten another bird, and then I was obsessed with birds, so I kind of put him on the back burner just as I started to kind of wonder what I could do with this guy. I got back into falconry, so he got shoved on the side burner, and I was off flying hawks again. Well, for Christmas, I got Amazon. I think it was Amazon was just starting to come out. It was some kind of online book thing. I think it was Amazon, but it might not have been. I found a book on the internet called A Sporting Chance. Have you guys read the book, or did you just happen to have the same name?
No, that's the reason for the name of the podcast is after the book.
I assumed that, but I didn't want to assume. I wanted to double check.
Aaron is showing the camera the book that he's holding in his hand.
Oh, I should grab mine. Anyway, well, I don't know where it is. It might. Let me check.
What a perfect guest. We didn't even plan this.
Did you not know that? Oh, come on, where is it?
That is so. I mean, dude, listen. While Joseph's looking for the book, I'm picturing where I can build a chamber dedicated to a mink right now. Are you not thinking the same thing, Aaron? Because I'm thinking.
I'm not.
Dude, I got creeks and water. I know ponds on golf courses that are infested with muskrat. Like, I could kill it.
I've got too many animals.
I know. Yeah. I do too. And I was just offered a peregrine falcon to train and fly for the year.
The thought has crossed my mind.
I got to get this book now. I have not read it myself personally.
And yours doesn't have a duck jacket either.
I used to have a couple. Yeah. I used to have a cover. I don't know what happened to it.
Check this book out, Joseph.
Oh, hey.
It's called the.
So did you guys really not know that, or did you know the book?
No, we named it after. We named the podcast after the book.
No, I understand that, but did you know that's how I started?
No.
Okay, cool. So this is the book that changed my life. Literally changed my life. So for Christmas, I found it. I think it was Amazon. This is when internet was really new. This is 2004 or something. So it would have been 2004 because I didn't have that mink more than a few months. So yeah, it would have been 2004 at this point. I got my first mink in 2003. Now it's 2004 in Christmas. So it's about a year later. I get this book for Christmas, and I'm like, oh, cool, different ways of hunting. I'm already into the falconry deal, so I read a little bit on the falconry section. I'm like, yeah, that's really, they don't know what they're talking about. I don't need to read the falconry section. So I started reading the other stuff because I already knew all the falconry. I knew more about falconry than clearly the author did, so it was kind of dumb to read that part. But which, if you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. No, it's not bad, but it's just cursory. Clearly, the guy doesn't really know about it. So anyway, in the Sporting Chance, there were two. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. Hunting with blowguns, hunting with freaking toads. I mean, like the weirdest stuff you can think of. Various different ways of hunting with dogs, from terriers to hounds to sight hounds and stuff. And the thing that stuck out to me was the two members of the weasel family that are in this book, the ferret and the otter. And I was thoroughly intrigued with the otter fishing. And he didn't have a lot of success in the book, but he talked about that it was a concept, and he talked about his experience with the otter. And I was like, well, mink catch fish. I wonder if I can catch fish with my mink. That would be interesting. And like I said, I'd already been having him catch fish in a fish tank and stuff. So I'd already kind of, in a very fake situation, started it.
You bagged him on fish.
What's that?
You bagged him on fish.
Yeah. I gave him baggies with fish. I don't even know if baggies is the right word. They were freaking fish tank. But yeah. So I'd already seen that they could swim underwater and were quite athletic and catching fish. And I thought, that's cool. And then I read the ferret section in this book. And in the ferret section in this book, this guy has some ferrets and he goes and he like puts them down some holes in the barn and the rats come out and they, kill the rats. And he talks about that. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But in the book, he also has a muskrat problem. And these muskrats are like digging in the banks in his little pond or something like that. I think it's a pond in his backyard and like wrecking his beautiful lawn. And he's like, man, I got to get these muskrats out. So I'm going to use my ferrets because, they work so great on the barn rats. So he sticks his ferrets in there and he's sitting out there with a shotgun ready to blast the muskrats when they come out. And the muskrats just freaking demolish his ferrets. They like split their head open and like almost drown them and all this stuff. It was like a train wreck. And he's like, holy crap. Well, ferrets are great for rats, but they're not great for muskrats. Well, I read this and I'm thinking, well, heck, my mink can kill any ferret. Like, I'm sure they could do way better on muskrats than those little wimpy ferrets could. And this is just assumptions I'm making. At this point, I really don't know anything about mink. I haven't researched them as a species. All I really learned was in my wildlife biology teacher told me, hey, they can catch fish. That's why I tried the fish in a fish tank idea. And that they were the jack of all trades, master of none. That was all that I really knew about me. Jack of all trades, master of none, and they can catch fish. I hadn't done any research. Well, reading this book planted a seed in my heart. And I'm like, wonder what I could do with these jack of all trades that my wildlife biology teacher taught me about. And I could see, man, they're stronger than a ferret there. Because I'd had ferrets before. They're stronger than a ferret, faster than a ferret, meaner than a ferret. I'll bet you they could get those muskrats. And at the time, fur prices were really high. And I think muskrats were going like $10 a pop or something. I don't remember what it was. But I was like, man, I could go out, catch all these muskrats and like sell their furs. And I was just like thinking of different ideas. And it was all just imagination at this point. And all started because of that book. So then I'm like, well, I really ought to research it and find out what wild mink already do, right? You could dream all you want about red-tailed hawks catching ducks, but reality, trying to actually catch a duck with a red tail is not very, you can do it, but it's difficult, right?
Right.
Other than getting lucky, it's difficult to repeat. And why is that? Red-tailed hawks don't really eat ducks very often, right?
Yeah.
There's weird one-off individuals, but as a species, don't eat ducks. So what do you hunt with a red-tail? What red-tailed hawks already eat, right? Rabbits and squirrels, what their natural diet is to some degree. And obviously, we do have some influence on it. Like kestrels aren't really a very normal part of a kestrel. Wow. Starlings, aren't a very normal part of a kestrel's diet, but you can influence them to catch them, more often. Anyway, so I'm thinking like that. I'm like, well, I got to start with what they already hunt. And let's start finding out what they already hunt. And I could hunt something similar, maybe have some added influence to it, but it needs to be somewhat natural what they're already catching. So lo and behold, I research and find out mink are the worst natural enemy to muskrats. And I'm like, yes, I was right. I knew it. When I just assumed, I think my mink can kill a muskrat. I'll bet you that, those stupid little ferrets got their butts kicked, but I think my mink could do it. Well, I found out, I was right. The number one predator for muskrats are mink. I'm like, oh, cool. And I researched more. I was like, okay, well, they can catch fish. I'm envisioning we're going to go out and catch big old rainbow trout. But I'm like, wonder what they actually catch. And so I research into it. They're catching little stuff. So when I go fishing, we're talking like panfish, little stuff. So I just do a bunch of research. At this time, also, I decided that, before this, I'd already made the decision, but I was getting to the age where I could do what in our faith is called a mission.
Yes.
And for 2 years, you leave your home and you go somewhere else. It could be foreign, like my dad went to the Philippines. My brother went to Germany, or it could be stateside, is what we call it. I have a brother who went to California, another brother who went to Idaho, another who went to Alaska. So for me, I got called to the Iowa Des Moines mission. And so for 2 years of my life, you're away from home and you're out focusing on one thing and one thing only, which is serving and helping other people. And so in that, because you're not, in your own home, you're like renting an apartment and, living with another guy that's another missionary and things like that. It's not really, and you're super, super devoted. You're not working a job to pay the rent or anything. You save up your money and then you pay the church a monthly amount to help cover your expenses. And what they do is they basically pool all the money together and like divvy it back out so that it makes it easier for everyone, right? So basically, I'm not working, I'm not dating, I'm not going to school. I'm focused 100% on doing the Lord's work for 2 years. So in that obviously put an abrupt halt to my falconry and to my goofy mink idea. And my mink idea, I absolutely wasn't going to give any room or give any time away from falconry. My mink idea was like, maybe I could do the mink thing in the summer while my hawk's on molt, and then or in my case, turned loose, right?
Right.
but when I couldn't fly a bird, and then when I catch a bird again in the fall, then I would put the mink up and fly the bird throughout the winter, and then get a mink again, or then not get a mink again, but start hunting again with the mink come spring. So that was kind of my idea. But of course, I was envisioning muskrats and fishing and stuff like that. So I had this all in my head, but I had this other goal, this competing goal, being a missionary. So I gave up the falconry and the mink and everything for 2 years. And during that time, we have once a week where we just kind of were free to just kind of do like worldly things, I guess, like play sports or board games or whatever you're into. Well, for me, I'm not really into sports or board games, so I would read books on mink. And as a missionary, you move around. You don't just stay in the same place for the full 2 years. You're like somewhere for like 3 to 6 months ish, and then you move to another location, and you're there for another 3 to 6 months ish, and then you move to another location.
And what are you doing? What are you doing while you're there? You're handing out tracts and talking to people and stuff like that. It's like a missions trip, essentially.
Yeah. So envision what I don't know if you ever read the Bible or anything, but envision what the apostles did.
I sure have. Yes.
Okay. So the apostles were sent out by the Lord Jesus Christ to go and spread the word and to do good and to help the sick and the hungry and to teach people about Christ is obviously their main goal, but help people on a physical monetary level as well, and just focus on bringing people to Christ and helping their lives be better. And that's what we did.
Awesome.
So we would go door to door, talk to people. If someone needed help, we'd be out like shoveling their driveway or mowing their lawn or whatever service they needed, as well as help teach them about Jesus Christ and the gospel and things like that. A lot of times we were helping people like overcome addictions, kind of clean up their lives. Like maybe they had some turmoil and I mean, people get into one thing you learn about as a missionary is people lead some pretty rough lives.
Yeah.
Most of the kind of more normal society kind of just snub their nose up at us and don't give us the time of day. Though definitely people like that talk to us as well. It kind of seemed more the kind of the people who had rougher lives were more likely to talk to us. And man, you found out horrible things that people experience right under our noses that we have no idea, that the different drug addictions and abuse and just horrible things that people experience. And so you're there to help them on a spiritual level and just kind of help their lives get together. Like we were helping people quit smoking or quitting alcohol addiction, drug addictions. We had a lady that was hooked on crystal meth, that we helped them, get over their addictions to meth and just different stuff. Which I mean, I say that like it's a big deal.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
You'll be shocked though. Actually, tobacco is probably it's close to, if not equal to, some of those really hard drugs. Everyone thinks, oh, heroin and crack. Yeah, that stuff's hard. Tobacco's comparable.
Yeah.
It's really hard to quit tobacco.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever had to do any of this, but helping other people, seeing the struggles that they go through. And I
wife,
say that though. I've
my,
seen a drug addict almost die from withdrawal. So I don't know that I should really say it's as bad, but
yeah,
it's rough.
it's rough. Yeah, my wife works at a rehab center, and I was the same. I kind of viewed people that were like that as kind of like, same like you were saying. Like, I not necessarily turn my nose up at them, but I'm like, get over it, stop with you. But like the stuff that my wife tells me, like these horrible things that these people go through, and it's always when they're a kid, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
and then they have to escape that thing that they went through as a child, and then they turn to the drugs, and it's so hard for them to it's so hard for them to live in their own mind because of the things they've seen or been a part of, or the abuse, like you were saying. And yeah, that's really cool that you did that, man, because people need help, and there's not a lot of help out there for people. So
yeah. I'll always remember one friend of mine, and he's been clean for I don't know how many years now. I've totally lost track. It's been a long time. But man, I remember him just curled up in the fetal position. He's like he's gonna die, and it's just because he hadn't had what was it? Was it meth? I think it was meth, crystal meth. I think to be specific. But anyway, he was like felt like he was dying just from withdrawals. Like
yeah,
it is hard stuff.
yeah, that's my wife's job, is making sure they don't die when they're going through withdrawals. That's literally her
It's
job.
it's horrible. It's
Brutal.
horrible. But yeah, so and it's not always it's not that's just one of the things. It could be like emotional distress that they're going through. Maybe they have no distress. They just are seeking truth. So it's not always people going through these horrible things. It's all kinds of walks of life. People who are wealthy, well off, doing great, but they're just seeking truth and more knowledge about God, and want to get closer to Jesus Christ. So all walks of life really, but it just seemed like the ones who are more hard off were more likely to accept us and
Right.
accept the invitation to talk to us. But yeah, so we did that for 2 years, and once a week I would have kind of our free day where we just kind of did, like I said, worldly things like play basketball or whatever. Um, and my thing was I wanted to learn more about mink, because now I had this obsession in my head. I'd already read almost every book, at least I could get my hands on falconry, and I was still like in love with falconry. And I'd be out walking around, I'd watch, oh look, see that red-tailed hawk, and I'd hear birds give an alarm call. Oh, there's a hawk somewhere. I was still thinking falconry, but I was reading mink, reading because every time I'd move to a new place, there'd be a new public library. So we'd go to that library, and I'd search every book I could on mink, and I'd read every little detail I could on their diet, how they hunted. And man, I found out there wasn't very much information on them. It was really frustrating. But I read everything I could, which was very little. And then eventually, my mission came to an end. I got home from my mission, and I continued with my obsession with mink. I eventually got a mink as a baby for the first time, raised her up, um, started to have a little success hunting with her, and then she caught a disease called botulism. It's not really a disease; it's a talk. They get intoxicated by a toxin that's in the mud. What happens is the ducks eat the mud and the gross, nasty crap, and they get the botulism toxin in them, and then they die, and the mink gets the dead or dying duck and gets the botulism from the duck.
Got it.
So anyway, lost that mink, had to start over, but eventually I started having success, started learning what mink actually could do. I always remember the first successful hunt we had. I mean, really successful. We had some little stuff here and there. Oh, the mink happened to catch this or that. But the first really successful hunt we had, we went to a park and we were going to catch fish. And that was my plan. But the mink kept going in these holes in the bank, and these rats had come running out. And we've come to find out, the people feeding ducks had created this rat infestation. And so we started catching rats, and I realized, man, this is more fun than the freaking fish. This is a lot more fun. And pretty soon, people started finding out, hey, I got this rat problem, and you chase rats for fun. Could you come help me? And so I started going and doing little pest control jobs. And as soon as I helped one person, they tell someone else, and then little by little, One job, funny. This is the longest contract I've had. Um, this job was a funny way how I got it. I was at a park, chasing these rats. It was actually the very first place I caught, had some success hunting. Well, one day some male Karen, you ain't supposed to be bothering the rats,
We
and
call
I'm like,
we call them Casey's.
Yeah, right. Not me. Kill all those rats.
So anyway, I'm like, well, mind your own business, dude. He's like, well, the park sign says don't harass wildlife. I'm like, dude, it's rats.
Yeah.
I'm harassing rats. Like, seriously, go find a better hobby than bothering people. And he's like, man, he wouldn't leave me alone. I'm like, dude, why don't you call the police if you're so bothered by it? Like, you're not the freaking police. Like, leave us alone. So he calls the police and the police show up. And I'm like, yeah, this dude's bothering us. Can you tell us to freaking leave us alone? Like, well, the sign does say not chasing. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're really going to go with, I'm not supposed to harass the rats? Well, technically, I'm like, dude, you're clearly not in charge. Give me the number of the guy in charge and let me get permission from him because they clearly don't care if I'm hunting rats in the park.
Yeah, come
So,
on.
so it was like a weekend, so that they kicked me out because I couldn't get a hold of the guy because it was a weekend. So, but they gave me the number. So Monday rolls around, and I call the guy in charge of the park, and I'm like, "Look, here's what's going on. We're just getting the rats. Like the freaking cops kicking us out. Like, you clearly don't want the rats there, right?" And he's like, "No, we don't." He's like, "But yeah, you should be fine. Let me check with our attorney. 'Cause it's a city thing. We check with our attorney, and I'm sure you'll be fine catching the rats in the park." Well, the attorney, you can only imagine what the attorney says. That's a liability. They might sue us. So they come back. Sorry, we can't have you chasing rats in the park. It's a liability. And I'm like, okay, look, dude, I found the smoke bomb in the rat den. You guys are clearly trying to get rid of the rats. Why is it you can hire some dude to waste your money putting smoke bombs down in their holes, which clearly isn't working because we caught 10 in one day. So it's clearly not working. Why don't you hire me to, if you won't even let me do it for free? Why don't you hire me to do it and fire him? And he said, well, get a business license and I'll hire you. And I'm like, okay.
Nice.
So I go get a business license and I come back and he's like, well, let me see what you're doing first. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go meet at the park. So we go to the park. I stick a mink down a hole. Rat comes out, he catches it, kills it right in front of him. He's like, you got the job.
That's awesome.
And so that was 2012. If I remember correctly, that was 2012. So ever since 2012, they've been my client.
That's so awesome. Did that male Karen ever see you there again? Oh, that's got to be so satisfying.
I have no idea. I have no clue. I couldn't recognize him if I did.
So now, when did you? So it sounds like you were just running. You had the mink, and you were just having fun killing rats and just exploring and continuing to build on this success that you're having with the mink. When did you start adding all these dogs? When did that happen?
So, I just did pure mink. I love dogs. I grew up, with my grandfather. I wanted a dog before I moved out. Never could have one. Finally moved out with my grandpa, and the first thing I did was get a dog. Like way before I got a hawk, I had a puppy. It was like, I think within weeks, I had a puppy. My grandpa's bitch happened to give birth. I took one of those pups, and it was mine.
Nice.
And that was the cow dog that I had that I would hunt with.
Yes.
So I ended up getting another random stray dog. It looked like a pit bull. I don't know what it was. And that collie and that pit bull looking dog would hunt together. The collie didn't use its nose at all, and the pit bull would track like a little hound. I mean, not as good as a hound, but same idea. But
Right.
but just like a hound, she didn't look up and see stuff. She would just sniff, 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 sniff. So that collie would be looking around like a sight hound kind of thing, and he was really quick and fast, and she was kind of chunkier pit bull, like kind of stocky. So she wasn't very fast, and he was fast. She wasn't paying attention with her eyes. He was looking. He wasn't paying attention with her nose, but she was sniffing. And those two were like, oh, he was also soft. So if anything fought back, even like a squirrel, he'd stand back and like bark at it. Like
Right.
he wouldn't even kill a squirrel or a rat. But she would like bawl bulldoze into a coyote. I mean, not that we ever caught a coyote, but I mean, I have no doubt she would have just bulldozed a coyote. Like she didn't care how much teeth or claws. More teeth and claws, the better. She didn't care. So those two dogs were my little hunting buddies, all growing up. Not all growing up, but during that time of my life in high school. So I really got into hunting with the falcons, with the dogs. I never hunted them together, like they didn't participate in falconry, but I would hunt the dogs all summer and fly the hawks all winter. Didn't have time for the dogs in the winter for hunting purposes. Actually, I did a little pest control to protect my hawks, obviously raccoons.
Right. Right.
Didn't want my hawks getting caught by any raccoons in the daylight. So I did actually do hunt during the falconry. Take that back with the dogs. Anyway, so fast forward, I've got the mink, and I just used mink, and it was really fun. And a buddy of mine got a dog. He wanted a hunting dog, and he got this random mutt. He didn't know anything about hunting dogs, and neither did I. I never really had a hunting dog. I ended with a freaking cow dog and some pit bull looking thing. I never had a hunting dog growing up, like breeding wise.
Right.
Nothing bred to hunt. So my buddy, he got this random dog from the pound. Essentially, it was KSL, which is it's akin to Craigslist. So basically, like Craigslist, he got on some Craigslist dog. He's like, we're gonna hunt this Craigslist dog, and it was like a collie mixed with a hog dog from Hawaii, which they claimed the hog dog was like Catahoula mixed with a Pharaoh hound, but I don't know. I don't believe the Pharaoh hound. I think it was a Catahoula. Maybe there was Pharaoh hound in there somewhere, but I think it was a Catahoula bull because this dog was a lot grittier than you'd expect from that cross, and his head was a little chunkier than you'd expect from that cross. So I think it was a Catahoula bull, which makes sense for hog dog guys, right? They cross bull into everything. No, we're going to take our hound and cross it with a bull. We're going to take a greyhound, we're going to cross it with a pit bull. So anyway, whatever that dog was, it ended up being a cool little hunt dog. Surprise, surprise! Like random stupid mutt. He worked and worked and worked, turned this dog into a pretty cool little hunt dog. We hunt coons, and we started hunting it with rats. We go do these ratting. We hit this chicken coop. We were doing ratting for just a neighbor for fun. It wasn't. I wouldn't get paid or anything. He just lived close by and he had rats, so we'd go over there with the mink. But we quickly realized, man, we're missing most of the rats. The mink goes in the hole. He might catch one, and all the other rats run away. And it'd be really nice if we had something outside to catch those rats that are running away. And so we'd bring my buddy's dog. And we also learned even on the canals, we'd go in and there'd be a rat in a bush, and it'd come popping out, and the mink's still in the bush, and the rat's getting away. And we're like, man, it'd be nice if we had a dog. And so we'd bring my buddy's dog. And then we really realized the use was when we go out in the desert and hunt rabbits. The mink could go down the hole, and if it got it in the hole, he caught the rabbit. If it got out of the hole, the rabbit was gone.
Yeah. Would he bring the rabbit back out of the hole? The mink?
Yeah. I don't know if I taught that at this point.
So you ended up teaching that though to have them bring it out of the hole.
It's very complicated and difficult.
I was going to say that sounds tricky.
I went through multiple mink before I finally had success, so I don't remember if I was. I think I was at that point. By the time we started doing rabbits, I was at the point where I taught them, but I don't think it was very consistent. It was even with that individual, it was hit and miss.
Yeah, it sounds like not a natural thing that they would want to do.
No, you can train a bird of prey to do it though. I know that's like the whole, they catch it and they just stay there and they can't bring it back. In certain situations, you can get them to bring it back. And how you teach them it is you give them a frozen, and I did this because I had a bird that carried really bad and I couldn't get it to stop. And so, sorry, I'm going off on a random tangent. But
no, go on.
If you take a frozen sparrow and in a controlled situation, so I had a hallway with a dead end, and I take a frozen sparrow and I throw it, and the little kestrel will go and bind to it, and then I do it. I think I just offer a big. Okay, I remember. Okay, so I had a hallway, dead end, and I throw a frozen sparrow, so he can't break in and eat it, but it looks like prey, so he wants to hang on to it. And then you pull out a big old like drumstick of a starling, like really visible bloody liver or something like that, and you call him really close, and he wants the meat, but he's got this inedible like thing that feels like prey. And so he'd fly back to you for the food. And then you just got farther and farther away until pretty soon he's flying from the end of the hallway with the sparrow. And then you take him outside on a creance and you get him flying with you on a creance with the sparrow. You throw the sparrow out, he grabs it, and once again, it's frozen, so he can't eat it. So if he just gets stubborn and starts plucking it, it's like, have fun with that, dude. You're not gonna be able to eat it. It's frozen solid. Anyway, eventually I got the bird to carry the sparrow to me. So anyway, I'd already had some experience doing what was almost impossible. And in most falconry circles, they'll tell you it's impossible. And it is in many circumstances, but in very specific ones, you can get a bird of prey to return.
Yeah, if you put some time into it, I've heard of guys catching sparrows or starlings, and then the bird flying it back in the window of the car. I've heard of that happen.
Merlins, I think, are the most easy to train from what I've gathered. Not that I've ever flown a Merlin. Once again, hearsay.
All of mine just would cache in a tree and come back to the lure because they love the lure. But they never. I read or
heard something about a guy that taught a Merlin to cache in a specific place.
And I heard that too. Yeah, well, but I'm trying to think who it was. That'd be if anyone listening knows. If anyone's listening knows who that is, he taught it to cache, kind of like what you do, Joseph, with the box.
The box. I think he had something like a Christmas tree or a bush or something.
Something like that. It was trained to always go back. Yeah, it was something in the back of his truck or his window. It was like some sort of contraption he built, and it was trained to go there every day or whatever. And when it caught a sparrow, it would go there and drop it and jump on the lure and then keep going.
Yeah, I really don't remember the details. This was so long ago, and I never talked to the guy. It was all like in a, I don't know. I don't even know how.
Maybe on a podcast. It sounds like I heard it on a podcast. I don't know.
Rabbits in the desert. So all these other things. It was nice to have a dog for when you're hunting the rats, but with the rabbits, it was like huge benefit because the rabbit comes out and he's gone. The mink can only catch him while he's down in the hole. They can't run him down in a field. And it's like, man, it'd be really nice to have a dog, even if he doesn't catch the rabbit, to at least chase the rabbit back into a hole or something like that. And so we started using my buddy's dog for this, the random mutt that he had. And we'd go out, and he also, we found, would find the rabbits. So we're like, man, this is useful because the mink isn't going to cover like a field and find a rabbit. He's going to go in every nook and cranny and take a long time to cover country. The dog could run around. Oh, here's a rabbit. Oh, sweet. And you put the mink down the hole. Oh, the rabbit got out. The dog either catches it or chases it back to a hole. And really our goal was for it to chase it back in a hole so we could try again with the mink, So anyway, I got really addicted to that. I was like, man, this is really cool having a dog and the mink working together. The whole time, this is my buddy's dog, not mine. My buddy also had a mink, by the way. So he was into the mink stuff. And he got a dog. So then when the ratting became more of a business and less of a hobby, well, I shouldn't say less of a hobby, it stayed a hobby, but it became a business to where, hey, I need to get as many rats as possible, or I need to get a specific rat that I'm getting paid to catch. I started realizing I need that. Because if the rat escapes, or if there's more than one rat, I really need to be catching as many as I can. And so that's when the dogs started to come in. And like I said, it began with me borrowing my buddy's dog. And then I just realized, man, I need to get my own dog. This is I'm really missing out without a dog. And so from there, I got my first dog. It was a lurcher, which is basically a sighthound mixed with something else. And I had it in my head that I needed something that had a good nose and was fast enough for these rabbits. We were doing a lot of rabbit hunting. And so I went and got a pointer lurcher. It was basically, to make it simple, it really wasn't this simple. It was a greyhound with a little bit of pointer mixed in. And I'll save you the story of every breed that was actually mixed in there. But basically, sighthound crossed with a little bit of pointer. But she ended up not really having enough pointer. And I wanted more pointer blood, but I just couldn't find one with more. And I just got what I had. She turned out great. She was a fun dog. It was super useful. But the sad thing was just as she got mature enough to start hunting and running and being fast, because I got her as a little puppy, the rabbit population just crashed. Like she literally caught a few as a pup and like into her first year, and then they crashed hard. And before that, the rabbit population was the opposite. It was at its peak, an all-time high that I've never seen in my life. We're talking rabbits and hares both peaking together. And so we would go out and see just the ground moving. You'd step up on a hill and be like, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's 6 running in the same direction. It was just bonkers. I've never, other than videos, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And then nothing. You go to places that we would stick a mink down and like 4 rabbits, cottontails obviously, coming out of the same brush pile. And now we've got to search and find brush pile with 1, you know. So it was super disappointing. And here I have got this super high, fast dog and like nothing fast to catch with. Well, the rats became bigger deal, and I started realizing, hey, you know, this fast dog's pretty useful on rats because she is so quick off the line and stuff. And so she ended up becoming a ratting dog because we just didn't have the rabbits to hunt anymore. And then to make things even worse, my favorite fields over the years as the rabbit population started to become healthy again, those fields all got developed. And so,
yeah, of course,
it got to the point where it got to the point now. I mean, even if they had a rabbit boom again, I have to travel an hour and a half just to get to the field.
Poor guy, a whole mile.
A mile. But I got to travel like an hour and a half to find anywhere decent, and that's just starting. Like, obviously, you got to get beyond that because you can't just hunt the same spot every time, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally abandoned hares and rabbits altogether.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since rats are such a big part of what you're doing, and ferrets are capable of doing rats, why not ferrets?
Because they can't do anything else that I do. So I still do the fishing, not very much, but a little bit. The muskrats are big though, and like I mentioned, well, for one, ferrets aren't semi-aquatic, so they really struggle to get in the holes. You got to find the hole and then dig it up for them halfway, and then put them in it. And then you put them in it, and they just get massacred by the freaking muskrats. So it just wouldn't work. I've heard of guys that had ferrets aggressive enough to work muskrats, but it was always temporary. Like eventually, something went wrong, and the ferret would get demolished by the muskrat, or something else would go wrong.
Now I have a question. So what's the legality of this? Not that we care on this podcast, but like if I'm like in New York or New Jersey, like can I just get a mink and start training it, or is there some process you have to go through? Because they're a fur bearer, right? So there is like can you just possess them, or do you have to go through some like similar to falconry, some kind of hoops you have to go through to get one?
The overwhelming majority of states, it's super easy because of fur farming. So they've already opened the way for you. Most states, they're less regulated than dogs. And in the states where they are regulated, it's like, Illinois, for example, it's like getting a fishing license. Go pay a $15 fee once a year. Good to go.
Is that the fur bearer's license?
Yeah. And with that license, you could have a raccoon, possum. I can't remember the list. Maybe raccoon's not on there, so don't quote me. But there's
what about weasel?
There's a list of fur bearers. I don't recall what's on the list, so I shouldn't start listing animals. Right? I'll list the ones that aren't on there.
I want a weasel now.
The fur bearers in Illinois. The fur bearer list encompasses mink and a bunch of other stuff, and you just pay $15. And like I said, it's like a fishing license. You go online, pay for your $15, and you got it. You don't even have to talk to anyone.
Wow. Okay.
And that's how most states are. Most states don't require anything.
Well, hunting with ferrets is very illegal in many states.
Yes, it is.
Hunting with ferrets is illegal in many states.
All states, I think.
I think it's legal in his state.
Is it?
I don't know. I don't care because I don't have a ferret.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are states where it's legal and states where it's not ferrets. Now, the hunting with mink is more complicated because it's a gray area. There's nobody does it. So they don't have laws on the books. So basically, the way I do it is I say, hey, it depends on if your laws are open ended or closed ended. And I don't know if that's even really a term. It's just something I came up with. So do not take legal advice from me. I am not a lawyer. Having said that, what I do is I look at the law and say, is it open ended law or closed ended? For example, fishing in Utah is very closed ended, angling only for game fish. So I really can't legally go out and hunt fish trout in a normal body of water. There are places I can. I can go to a certain place where it's stocked in a certain way, takes all the legal junk out of it, and I could go shoot them with a shotgun or catch them with a net or whatever. They don't care because they're a stocked fish in a privately owned facility and da 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 da. But like in a normal stream, I can't just go out and get trout by any other method other than angling and the specific type of angling that they spell out, right?
Right.
You can't be like snagging them, and you can't be using corn as bait and all their regulations. That's very clear, cut and dry. I cannot do that except for the places where it's not run by the state; it's owned privately. But there are fish that are totally open ended. I can go and get as many carp as I want, pretty much any way that I want, as long as I'm not damaging the body of water with poison or electricity or something like that, or blowing them up with dynamite. Like they don't really care outside of like harming the environment. They don't care how or how many carp you harvest, and all of the non-game fish, not just carp, but so like feral goldfish, carp, and there's a list of other things that I could go out with a mink because it's very clear, open ended. Like get them however you want. Muskrats in my state, same way. As long as you're not harming the body of water, they don't care how you harvest or when you harvest muskrats. Same with squirrels. Brown rats have zero protection except for extremely obsessive compulsive states like Idaho. You have to have a hunting license to freaking trap field mice. Like they're ridiculous in Idaho. But most states, they're like, oh, it's a non-native pest. Do whatever you want to. So like brown rats, you're good to go. In your state, whatever states you guys be in, they might have a specific regulation on muskrats, for example. They might say muskrats are trapping only.
Right.
Or it might be more open ended. Like, this is the season when you can harvest them. We don't really care how you harvest them. It just depends on your state. So, like Illinois, very clear, cut and dry. I can't go and pursue muskrats because you can't mess with their burrows. You have to catch them by trapping. Like it's so specific. Even the traps you're using, you have to use XYZ trap.
Right.
Like it's so spelled out that it's very obvious that I'm poaching if I go get one with them. You can't net them. You can't shoot them. Like it's very cut and dry. It's a close-ended law. They spell out you can only do muskrats A, B, C. That's it. Or A. That's it. So for Illinois, for example, I couldn't go do muskrats, but frogs, bullfrogs, very open-ended. Yeah, you can harvest them. This is your bag limit. You need a fishing license. This is the season. I don't remember if they have a season, but they spell it out, but they don't really care how you harvest the frog. So I can go out and catch, in my mind, Illinois Fish and Game might argue it otherwise, but in my mind, the way they stated in the law, I could go out and catch a frog in Illinois with a mink. All I need is a fishing license for the frog and a fur bearer license for the mink. So it just depends on the specific laws in your state and how they spell them out.
So, for example, in New York, if you were, it says hunting, you can hunt November 1st to October 5th to April 15th muskrat. It cannot be harvested with a firearm larger than a .22 caliber.
Oh yeah. So Illinois, New York, you're probably good. They're not spelling it out. You can only do it this way.
Right. Right. So I can trap them, I can shoot them, but I can't shoot them with anything bigger than a .22.
Yeah. But like Illinois, you can't net them. You can't, like, it's a whole list of can'ts.
Right.
And not only just a list of can'ts. So what if they give you a list of can'ts? Mink aren't ever going to be on that list. It's if they say this is the only way you can do it. That's where it comes to closed end. Like angling only for fishing, trapping only for muskrat, things like that. And for squirrels, like there might be, I'm sure there's a state somewhere where it's like you can only harvest squirrels with an Excalibur gun, blah 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 blah, or right. a wrist rocket or something like that.
Yeah,
they're going to spell out the only ways you can do it, which eliminates everything else that you could think of, like trapping or mink or.
Yeah, and I would imagine that squirrels would be pretty difficult with a mink, like especially where I live.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
those tree squirrels, I don't have any experience. I can't think of ever doing it with a mink. I might have and I've forgotten, but it would have been one off, so it wouldn't matter anyway. One offs don't matter in hunting, right? Oh yeah, once I caught a Canada goose with my red tail. Yeah, okay, go repeat, man. Like,
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying you're a liar, but go repeat that. It's really hard.
Sure.
One-off goofy things can happen. Now, I have buddies that have done it, and it's pretty doable. And what they did is they did a combo of Harris hawk and mink. So they went out, they chased the squirrel, they lost the squirrel in a hole. And when they're trying to get away from a hawk, that could be a boreal hole in a tree, it could be a terrestrial hole in the ground. They'll go wherever they can go to get away from that freaking hawk. And then they just put the mink in, whatever the hole happens to be. I think he had some method to tell the mink where the hole was when it was up a tree. I think he had a long pole and tapped on the hole. I don't remember how he did it because I never saw it. This was all just verbally told to me. But mink can climb. They're not good climbers. They're not like a squirrel where they're jumping from tree to tree, but they can climb. And so it'd be hiding in some knot hole way up the tree, and he'd tap it with an extended pole, is my memory. And the mink knew that meant, oh, that's where there's a squirrel. And he'd shimmy up the tree, go in the knot hole, and either kill the squirrel or bolt the squirrel. The squirrel bolted, he called the mink in, put it away, pull the hawk back out, and start chasing.
So he wouldn't do them in tandem because the Harris would probably try to grab the mink out.
Yeah, the Harris would try and grab the mink, and the mink would try to grab the Harris.
Right. It'd be a bad situation.
Somebody's going to die in the end of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be done because these guys in Europe are killing, dozens and dozens of rabbits on these beautiful, I think they call them moors, right? Is that what they're called? Those grass areas? And they're using the ferret, and the goshawks aren't trying to grab the ferret.
Yeah, I think it could be done. The easiest way is it wouldn't work for squirrels specifically, but here's an idea I've always wanted to try and never have, is quail. I think quail would be a wonderful and exciting quarry to hunt with a mink and a coop. A coop's not going to go for a mink anyway.
Right.
They know what a mink is. I've seen them come down, look at my mink. About that, unless you've got a real crazy coop and you've got a little bit low and it's beyond Yark and just grabbing deer and stuff, or an imprint. Maybe an imprint wouldn't be a good idea. But if you've got a passage coop, he's going to look at that mink and be like, I don't want to be his lunch.
Right.
And especially birds aren't dumb. Even though coops are probably one of the dumber,
simple-minded,
lizard-brained of the raptors. But they still realize, hey, I see that guy all the time, and I never get to catch him. They'll kind of stop thinking of them as prey, even if they maybe naturally had some kind of tendency towards them. Anyway, sorry, back to what I was saying. Man, those quail, when they start putting in, because that coop is on them, they'll really hug cover. You slide that little mink in there, he's going to be snatching quail left and right. Yeah. And the ones he doesn't snatch, they're going to come popping out in your coops.
Now, would your mink, so I'm just trying to picture this, because I want to, I was telling Aaron when you were looking for the book earlier, now I'm thinking, how can I do this? The mink is not, you say, it's kind of like a dog and kind of like a hawk in the sense that it's, it's instinctual the way it acts, but it also kind of has some sort of relationship with you. When your bird is on, let's say you used it, because in most states that I know of, ferreting is illegal. So if you used a mink instead of a ferret, would your mink just definitely try to kill your bird? If it came up on the kill,
Well, for sure. It wouldn't matter if you had a freaking eagle. If he's down on the ground and that eagle doesn't see him coming, the eagle will kill and eat mink all day long. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if he's down on the ground, he's just a big goose.
Right. He's just going to try to kill him.
Jump on his back
with their hawk in the field.
Oh yeah. I have a buddy.
But that's why I had asked about ferrets, because ferrets are domestic species, which people may not realize that. Joseph may know more than me about this, but ferrets have been domesticated probably prehistory, right? Probably don't even know.
Oh yeah,
we know it's a wild animal.
A couple thousand years. We don't know the actual. It's at least a couple thousand.
Yeah, so ferrets are like house cats, cattle, dogs, whatever. They're fully domestic. Mink is a wild animal, and that's why I would not trust a mink with a bird on a kill.
No, me neither.
What you could do, though, is you could. This is an assumption on my part. I've never done it, but they've started to come out with really small e-collars. And if you put an e-collar on a mink and you had a young mink, um, so it's not gonna. If there's an accident, it's not fatal, and the mink is very impressionable. I think you totally could e-collar train a mink to be scared of a hawk. I'm convinced you can. I've never tried it, and you might if you can't. You could also have a cattle prod. If well, it's the same. Well, my point is you can't smack a mink, right? If your mink
Right.
attacks, it's like smacking a bird. You're gonna hurt it. A dog does something wrong, quit that. You didn't
Yeah.
hurt the dog. You just hurt his feelings, and he quits it. You can't
Yeah.
smack a mink. You can't smack a hawk. They're too small and fragile. But you give them a little shock, and they're like, that's uncomfortable. I don't like that. It doesn't hurt them.
Yeah. I was going to
But it
ask that if an
startles them.
e-collar would work, like on recall, if an e-collar would work.
Yeah, it does. The problem is you can't hunt with an e-collar on. So
Right.
it would have to be something that you wean them off of, and you could get them coming maybe more solid and things like that. I have a buddy who experimented a bunch with it. I've just come to the conclusion that it's not really worth it. But if you were doing falconry, it could be. And I'm pretty confident that once you get it in that mink's head, hey, this thing is scary and electric. I don't think he's going to keep trying.
Right.
You would need to be checking constantly. Hey, is he still okay? He's good. He's still not interested in the hawk. You would need to double check regularly to make sure.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm convinced you could do it. I've never tried it. I have no reason to. Right? I'm not a falconer anymore. When I
Yeah.
got big into mink, I just basically transitioned out and realized, I couldn't do both, and the mink became such an obsession. Especially when I was trying to teach them to bring stuff back, it became such an obsession. Bringing stuff back is a lot like waiting on. Like it takes years to train. Maybe not with all the crazy modern tools that we have now, but back in the day, not that I've ever once again trained a hawk to wait on. I was very specialized in falconry. I did kestrels and one little outlier coot, or excuse me, sharpie, that I thought was a coot.
Right.
um, but from what I've heard describing waiting on, it's a multi-year training process. It's really complex.
Yeah. It takes time. You got you wed them to the kite, balloon, or drone, and then eventually you have to wean them off of it. And I know guys like I was talking to Danny Ertzgard out in, I think it's Washington. He says he doesn't even game hawk his falcons the first season. It's just the whole season is just waiting on, and then the second season he weans them and starts killing. I know guys that do it, in the same season. But yeah, to your point, so it takes time. So a mink is not like just grabbing stuff and bringing it back to you like the first.
It's very much like waiting on. Like if you want to think, now obviously the process is different, but and that's me assuming things from reading books and talking. I've never taught a hawk to wait on. But the way it's described to me and my understanding, if I do understand it correctly, it's a similar process as far as the ridiculous number of repetitions and effort it takes to do it. Now, having said that, there are, just like I described mink, one is like a freaking goshawk and the next one's like a Harris hawk. Their personalities are so extremely different from one to the next. Caching is one of those traits, and you can have what I call a prodigy caching mink that just, he's a prodigy, and he's like he makes 2 mistakes his whole life, and you're like, what the heck? He just does it. And I've had a couple of them, but you're talking like 1 in 10 or less. I don't have numbers. It's like 1 in 10 or less.
I saw one of your videos years ago, and you were using like a dog crate essentially with like a tunnel in it, and the idea was that the mink would catch something, and then you kind of trained it that the tunnel was a safe place for it to go, the dog crate, and you would kind of show the mink that you have the crate, or you'd put it down, and then it would naturally want to go in there, and then you would kind of do some sort of, I guess, like a trade-off essentially to try to. Yeah. Are you hunting these mink with like weight control or?
Yep.
Okay, so you're weighing them every day?
Yeah, so I didn't initially. But I eventually just got down to the point where I was like, man, if I want to have absolute control, I've got to do it just like falconry. And so I started weighing them into, I don't remember which mink. Like I remember the individual, but I'm trying to think of how many. And I was at like my fifth or sixth mink. I realized, you know what? I should just go back to falconry and start, actual weight control.
Yeah.
I just eyeballed it before. I was like, you're kind of fat. You're kind of thin,
right, right.
And it works. And I do that to today with certain mink. I eyeball it. The ones that I have on a specific weight are the ones that I'm caching training. Because it's so much effort, right now my process is I will bottle raise a mink and I try to cache train. If it's clear he's going to be a nightmare, I will quit.
Right.
If he looks like he's cat picking it up, I will work with him until I either have success or give up, which is about a year. I'll give up at a year. Like, you're not figuring this out.
Yeah.
And the rest, I don't teach anything except for kill it, leave it, and come back to the box. Kill it, leave it, come back to the box.
Well, that's super convenient. I mean, that's like falconry essentially. So, but how do you get them? I mean, we're going 3 hours now, but we could probably keep going because I want to know, like, how do you get it to let it go? Like, just,
no,
it's
it's kind of easy. To get them to leave it and come back is super easy. Like, it's almost like a natural response that they already want to do.
The cattle prod?
So,
no, I'm just
I shouldn't have ever said that.
No, I know. It's okay.
I'm just thinking of ways to save your hawk and not hurt the mink,
Yeah.
But no, I make them really lazy. So I grind their food up to like hamburger, and it's whole animal, right? So it's got fur, bones, guts. I take out intestines and stomach that have all the food content.
Yeah.
But everything else is ground up through a grinder. And a lot of them is muskrats that are already skinned because the fur has value. But a lot of them are brown rats and squirrels that their fur has no value. So I mix it all up. Because if everything you grind has fur, it's going to be too much fur. It's going to be just way too much full.
Right.
But with muskrats, it's like 3 muskrats and a brown rat, 3 muskrats and a squirrel, 3 muskrats and a rabbit. The fur, it's like quadruple or more bodies per the full furred animal. So it mixes in just right. You get just the right amount of roughage. You've got all the bones and their internal organs and the meat and fat and all that mixed in. And it's super easy to eat. They just and they swallow it, right? But just like a hawk breaking in, it takes work. Chewing through the hide, crunching up the bones. It's a lot of work to just sit and gnaw a rat or a squirrel into a meal. Whereas if you go in, slice it open, pop, here you go, hawk. They're like, man, you just saved me like half an hour of work getting down to the meat. Right? Same with the mink. Hey, look, you just saved me all that time. It's all ground up. I just chew and swallow. I don't have to sit and gnaw. And obviously, certain animals are way easier to break into than others. Baby rats, little mice, minnows, man, it's as easy or almost as easy as eating the ground stuff. So you don't let them get any of that easy stuff. You start them with things that are kind of hard to chew into. A squirrel, an adult rat, a rabbit. It's like, man, this is a lot of work. And then you just say, hey, look, I got this right here. Eat this instead. So let's say I'm not training it to cache. I'm training it to kill and leave it. I'll let them go in their cage with nowhere to hide. Give them something, a rat, let's say. They kill the rat, big adult rat, so it's hard to chew into. And they're sitting there like, I'm going to eat this thing, and you eat this thing, and you just go over there and you cover it with ground meat. You're like, hey, look, here, eat this instead. Oh, hey, that is easier to eat. Pretty soon, you do that a couple times, then you start calling them. Hey, they already know what calling means. Obviously, they're not being introduced to the calling process.
Right.
They're being introduced to the leave what they caught process. Pretty soon, they kill it and they come looking for you, and they just leave the body. They're like, I don't want to chew that thing up. But nice. You have to start with stuff that's hard, because if you give them a little mouse, it's like, dude, that's as easy to chew up as the hamburger.
Yeah.
Ground meat, not really hamburger, but that's as easy to eat. I'm just going to crunch this thing down and then I'll come, So you got to create the habit, and usually it works. They'll go through, kill a whole nest of pinkies. Dude, pinkies are as easy to eat as a freaking ground muskrat. Why are you leaving the pinkies? It's just a habit. You just kill. Okay, I'm done. Hey, Pops, where's my food? Jump in the cage. I don't even have them trained to touch or handle or anything. They just jump in that cage. They got ground meat and they eat it. Then I've got the other extreme. I'll
So
bottle
cool.
raise one, put in all this time, get it super comfortable being handled and harnessed, and then I'll teach it. Hey, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. And if I get really lucky, they'll learn it quick. And if they get really unlucky, I'll quit halfway through and be like, dude, this guy's too dumb.
Right.
It's not figuring it out. And if I went into that process, we'd be here for a while. So let's just say it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I end up with two different kinds of mink. The hand raised, bring it back type. And that's a goal. It doesn't happen with every mink. Like I said, some I just cut my losses and stop the training process. But if they show an inclination to, I teach them to bring it back. And then the rest of my mink, which are just come back to the box. That's all they know. They're not handleable. They'll bite me just as fast as they'll bite the rat.
Really? Wow. Okay.
They just go out, they kill, and they come back to the box for me. I can't even pick them up or touch them or anything.
That's so incredible to me. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Because I was trying to figure out how this is like. Is this like something you're playing with at home in the house, and then you're going out hunting with it? But it sounds more.
The one that I bottle raise, yes. The rest, they're just
killing machines.
They're just killing machines. Yeah.
It sounds. So I'm just thinking in terms of falconry and accipiters. It sounds like you're using the jackpot method, where you're basically teaching the bird or the mink that it's just easier to just trade off and just get the full reward rather than sitting there trying to pluck this thing. It just hops off and just gets its reward, and you move on to the next one. Are you killing multiples with the mink, or are you just doing one-offs every day and swapping things out?
The ones that retrieve, typically not, because I'm so obsessed with getting that retrieval, that difficult retrieval habit, that I will sometimes with certain individuals get to where I'm doing multiples.
Right.
But it's only if they want to. If they show me any hesitation, it's like, dude, I spent so much time getting you to bring me something back. I'm not going to screw it up trying to get multiples. So some individuals, dude, they'll totally do multiples. No, they'll go catch something, bring it back, catch something, bring it back. We'll catch like 6, 7, 8 in a night. Others, they're a little hesitant. I'm like, I'm not even going to, I don't want to risk messing up what I put into you.
Right.
One is great for me, man.
So they catch the muskrat, kill it, leave it, go in their box, get their jackpot, and then you're done.
Those guys, I can do multiples. I'm talking about the retrieving me.
Got it.
What I call caching me. I do not want to mess them up. The ones who kill it and leave it, yeah, dude, I'm multiples with those all the time. That's fine. They'll come back for a little snack, because really they'd rather kill anyway. They're not in it for the food. They'd rather just kill, and then make sure that they're satisfied at the end of the day. So they'll go kill something. I call them back, give them a chunk of meat. Kill something, call them back, give them a chunk of meat. Kill something, call them back, feed them up.
Right.
Yeah, those will do multiples all day long. The ones that I'm training to bring back, I'm really cautious about multiples. And I'll try a little bit, kind of dip my toe in. Will you do multiples? Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. We'll feed you. Just please bring it back.
Right. That's
and
so
some
neat.
individuals, I've had individuals that have killed like 6 and brought them all back. I've had some. They get so into it, they're like, bring it back. Don't even take the food. Go out and catch another one. I'm like, I was trying to feed you, and they're off catching another one and bringing it back. But that's like dream,
right? Yeah, the pinnacle.
That's like the ideal of ideals. That mink has reached, like you said, the pinnacle of.
Yeah,
I think the mink on muskrats is, no offense to anything else you're doing, but I just think that's the coolest.
Oh, I agree. It's the most challenging, because the mink is the natural predator for the muskrat. Brown rats, it's not at all. They don't know how to handle a freaking mink coming down their hole. They don't know what to do. Yeah. Muskrats, everything in their repertoire, everything in their life is built on not getting killed by a mink. Every hole they dig is designed to not be killed by a mink. Every instinct they have is designed to not be killed by me. It's the Cooper's hawk and quail of the mustelid world. Just like a Cooper's hawk is the ideal accipiter to be going after a quail for, and the quail is the ideal. Maybe you don't agree with this, but that's just kind of the way I've had it described. The ideal prey for the coop and the ideal predator for the quail, and they're just in a constant struggle to not be killed by the other in the in the quail sense side of the story, and the hawk sense is be able to get in there and catch the quail. Yeah, that's the mink and the muskrat. And the
Super
muskrat
neat.
has the very strong upper hand because the ones who fail at their little game do not reproduce. Whereas a mink, if he doesn't catch a muskrat, he'll catch something else. He's not specializing on muskrat. So the muskrat has a very strong upper hand because, like I said, the failures don't reproduce. The failed mink who never catches a muskrat in his life can live happy, fat and happy catching minnows and crayfish and bunnies and other stuff. So that's why it's so difficult is the muskrat is a specialist at getting away from the mink, but the mink's not necessarily a specialist at catching the muskrat. And so you really do have an uphill battle. And that's why a lot of times you'll see me doing things to help the mink. I'm like, hey, it's over here. And I'm throwing pebbles or even netting the muskrat for him and stuff like that. That's because the muskrat does have the upper hand. But when you get a mink that is just the ideal muskrat hunter, that they really do give that muskrat a run for their money. They still need that human there, kind of not need, I should say, but they're very much can be helped by that human being there. Just like when you're hawking rabbits, sure that hawk can catch a rabbit, but if you're there flushing bunnies, dude, he's gonna have so much better success.
You add you add dogs plus the hawk, then you've got a good shot.
Yeah, you, dogs, hawk, all of them together, just trying to get that bunny to move for the hawk. Well, in the case of the muskrat, it's the opposite. You're trying to get that muskrat to hide for the mink. He gets in that hole, he's in trouble. He's swimming out in that deep water, dude. He's pretty safe. Now, like I said, I've gotten mink now that are good at catching them in the open water. But what you got to do is you got to help the mink to locate it because he can't just track it. It's in the water. He can't smell it. So you have to show him, hey, dude, it's over here. And you got to picture their point of view. So number one, mink don't have very good eyesight, but even if they had the eyes of a falcon, dude, they're at water level.
Right.
What can they freaking see? They stick their head under the water. Well, I can see a few feet in front of me. Even if they had the eyes of a freaking golden eagle, right? They look under the water. The cloud of the water, even the clearest of water, is going to shut off their vision not very far in front of their face. They look above the water. They're at water level.
Right.
One little wave, one little rock totally blocks their view. They can't see anything. And so you have to be the guy up above bird's eye view saying, hey, look, he's over here. Dude, I know you can't track him because he's in the water. I know you can't see him because of your poor vision plus horrible point of view. He's over here. Let me throw a rock. Oh, okay. Now swim over there. And that muskrat just takes off twice as fast as the mink. Well, guess what? A mink could swim down a half a dozen muskrats in a row. Just swim them into exhaustion, kill one, catch the next. They've got way better endurance, but a fraction of the speed, initial speed. So that in the water, on land, they're way faster than a muskrat. But in the water, fraction of the speed. So they just chase him down, chase him down, chase him down, and you keep telling him where he's at. Because really what would happen in nature, the muskrat just goes off. He's in the water, there's no scent. He can't figure out where he's at. Or he just sits in the middle of the pond, waits for the mink to come, and then he dives and swims away,
Right.
But when I'm there, I'm like, hey, and once again, it's a situation where I can do that. Can I do that in a big lake? Not realistically. The muskrat just swims off and avoids me too. But in like a little stream and clear water, shallow water, like everything has to be just right. I can see the muskrat. He can't avoid me. And I keep telling the mink, hey, he's over here. He's over here. I'm throwing pebbles where he's at. And we can just basically work that thing down and the mink catches it.
Well, you've got to set the mink up to be successful, just like we do with hawks. There's places with tons of game that we don't bother going to.
Oh, yeah. It's impossible. Or not impossible. It's improbable. It's a waste of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got a couple more questions. One is, how many people do you think are doing minkenry now?
Everyone tries. I mean, everyone. That's a stupid way of putting it. Lots of people have tried, but they always get out of it. They get frustrated. Their mate dies. It escapes. It doesn't work out. Or what usually happens, the number one reason is they don't try. They're scared of losing it, so they never let it go. They're you know how falconry is. Most people become pet owners.
Right.
Even falconers, it's like, oh, dude, you've been successful in falconry. You're going to take off. He's, man, I'm going to go back to falconry. dog guys. Oh, I've been hunting dogs my whole life. Oh, great mink, and they end up going back to dogs. It's just
So
failure after
no
failure.
one else is stuck with it.
No, and there are people who've had success. So I'm not saying like no one's had success. I know guys that had a good season or two, and they fall off for some reason.
Right.
Huh.
And I'm sure somewhere somebody's doing it, and I just don't know. I'm not trying to say nobody, but I mean, to my knowledge, let me think. There might be someone. No. No. I know one guy who had screaming success without even my help or anything, and it was on prairie dogs, something I've never pursued. And he had a totally different method than me. It's prairie dogs are out in the desert, so he called them back with water. In fact, he didn't even teach them to call. He would go out. It was a pest control deal. It wasn't really a support sport for him. It was pest control. He would go out and he'd have a live trap with a mink in it and a little cup for water. And he'd find a prairie dog. He'd drive over to where the prairie dog is, see which hole it went down, open the trap, let the mink out. He goes down the hole, fill his little cup with water, leave the trap set, and he'd drive off. Find another prairie dog. Remember where he left the trap, right?
Yeah.
Go put his mink down, open the trap, fill his little cup with water, and he'd go on. And he'd just do that every day. He had like half a dozen mink, and they'd catch them up. They'd catch the prairie dog, eat their fill. They're immediately after catching a prairie dog or wrestling with an animal, they get thirsty. Eating makes them even more thirsty, so they catch it, kill it, eat it, come back, get a drink, and then he'd go back and he'd pick all his full traps with a mink in them, and he'd do it the next day. And he never fed his mink. So if they didn't catch something that day, they didn't eat something. And he had and a lot of times he didn't even know if they caught something. He let them go in a hole that he knew had a prairie dog, and they either killed it and ate or they didn't. And then he'd pick them up and bring them home and do it the next day. And none of them starved to death, so clearly it was where they were catching.
Yeah.
So that guy had tons of success. Why did he quit? Well, just one by one, things happened. He lost his mink, it died. Over the years, and I don't know if it was 2 years or 1 year or what, over time. And obviously, he had a very sloppy way of doing it. Right?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't sound very like any real training going on. It sounds like he's just recatching them every day.
No, he's just recatching them every day, or
It's
not.
like
And then when he does it,
it's like putting out a BC for your red tail every day. Like,
but that worked for a period of time. I don't know what it was: 2 years, 4 years, 1 year. I mean, it was a while that he did that. It wasn't. I don't even think 1 year. I think 1 year's selling him way short. I think it was a couple years plus. But then eventually, he one by one, something happened to each mink, and then he just never replaced them. And he's like, yeah, it's not really working as pest control. I still have prairie dogs everywhere.
Yeah.
Just quit doing it. And that was probably the most successful guy that I like long term doing it, who caught the most game, who did the most success. I mean, he literally, that's how he fed his mink. He didn't shoot a prairie dog and feed it to him. He just turned them loose and they got their own. So he probably caught more game than anyone other than me in the whole world, I would assume. I mean, I shouldn't say world. There's always something you don't know about. But I mean, in my known world, let's say, because that's the only safe thing I can say, but I know. And then other guys who've been under my tutelage and I've sponsored in detail and helped them get the mink and walked them through everything. Some of them fell off before success. Some of them fell off some point after success. It's just everyone eventually gets bored of it, or something goes wrong and they get frustrated.
So if
mink are a lot like owning a small bird of prey. They're not. So many dumb things can go wrong.
Right.
It's not like owning a big old freaking peregrine that you own for 22 years and you're still hawking with. No, it's like owning a kestrel or a sharpie that, oh yeah, I got this new bird, and then it flew into a window. Fetch, stupid little thing.
Right.
And you got to start all over again.
So if somebody wanted to get into minkenry, you wrote a book, can be bought on Amazon, and I'm sure you probably have a website. But how would they get their first mink?
Well, that first depends on if they're anywhere where I can help them. There's obviously guys who've done it over in Europe and such. Oh, there are some guys in Europe that I could kind of say are doing it, but it's more of a pet that kind of catches stuff than a full on hunting. Now I think about it, there's a few guys in the UK, but their hunting side of it, they're very limited success. It's like I said, a pet that occasionally catches something.
Right.
Anyway, sorry. So back to your question. It depends on where they're at. If they're somewhere I can help them, that's really their best route. It's difficult to legally acquire meat. I mean, you
Can
could
you
go out and
ship them?
catch one. Yeah, used to. It's really hard now. But used to be able to just put them on an airplane and ship them anywhere in the U.S. But they've stopped shipping everything. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. You can't ship dogs. You can't ship anything unless you're a freaking military guy.
Yeah, I heard that, but I
I'm
just got
assuming that'll pick up again. It's difficult using transport people because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, the airports are great because they only have it for a few hours,
Yeah, oh yeah.
right? They don't
Yeah.
have any care that they need to do. It's like, don't touch it, just get it to the guy. Whereas if it's ground shipping, it's like, yeah, you got to feed and water it. It stinks. And it's kind of
Do they smell?
complicated.
They smell a lot, Joseph. They have
If
a
they're
very.
scared, yeah, if they're scared,
They
and
must, right?
if their poop and pee builds up, it's stinkier than most animals.
Right.
If you keep them clean, though, they're not like ferrets that smell no matter what you. If you keep them clean, and they don't stink like a rabbit. Like if you ever have a pet rabbit, dude, those things reek. Or like a male rat, dude, those things reek. They're not quite as potent as far as their poop and pee, but if you startle them, and every mink is different on what level startles them, they'll release musk, which is rather. But it goes away. It's not like skunk musk that sticks. It's gone within minutes or hours, or if it's really bad, days. But it's not like skunk where you're smelling it 4 months later. Like,
Is
I
it
remember when my dog got sprayed 4 months ago.
right? Is it comparable to skunk?
No, not at all. Not in my opinion. It's a very different smell, so it doesn't. It's not similar at all.
Right.
You wouldn't mistake one for the other. Um, and if you're in a really confined area, it can be kind of eye watering, but it's nowhere near the potency of a skunk.
Do you think that you're possibly used to the smell at this point?
That is also a fair point. Regardless of me being used to anything, like I've been blasted in the face by a skunk and just man.
Oh, you're used to it.
Dude,
Then.
Like
you
I know
smell
what
like a
skunk
mink.
must tastes like. That's how close and personal I've been to skunk spray. So I know what it tastes like. It's a mixture of garlic, onion, and a little bit of lemon, like mixed together.
Ooh.
Really potent garlic, really potent onion, a little bit of lemon.
Sounds like it would detox your body pretty good.
And it's yellow. I know the color of skunk musk too. It's yellow.
Yeah, I
And
had
it can come out in globs. Like it's not always a mist. It can glob.
Ugh.
That's so disgusting. I shot a skunk with my bow years ago, and I tried to skin it on my driveway. And when I pushed down on it, like with my knife, dude, it's shot out all over my driveway. I kid you not, it's that spot on the driveway
when
smelled,
it rains.
dude. For like 2 years, it smelled.
When
like
it rains, right?
It would rain, and then it would get up, and like every day come because we would park in the driveway and then walk through the garage to go into our house every day, and it smelled for like over like literally almost 2 years. And I would show my friends, I'd be like, smell right there, and they would like bend down and smell in the cement, and it still smelled like skunk for like 2 years. It was insane.
Fortunately, mink are nothing like that.
Now
Most of their spray, it's gone within hours. Like bad ones. And a really light one is literally minutes. Like
Right.
it's like a fart. Like it lasts that long.
Okay.
A really bad one, like they really just emptied their glands. They were terrified when they released it. It could be hours and maybe a day or two if it gets into just the wrong substance. Like I don't know, right into some carpet where
Right.
there's no ventilation or something. If you did just the worst of worst, it might last a couple days. A normal bad is a couple hours, and a light one, like I said, it's like minutes.
Could you get the glands removed like they do with skunks? Because I know you can buy skunks as
You
pets
could,
now.
but it's not. It's dumb. There's no point in doing that.
Okay.
If the mink is even remotely tame, you could go months or years between musking.
Oh, I got it. Okay, I got it.
I shouldn't say remotely tame. If it's solid tame, there are weird one-offs that are really nervous and you'll kind of smell it. But yeah, I mean, if you're not scaring your mink and grabbing it and wrestling with it, like it's not an issue.
Got it. Now I have a question that is interesting to me because it's right up your alley. I don't know how it would be possible, but if you're able to do it with a mink, what's to say you can't do it with a fisher, a martin, or a Wolverine.
Oh yeah, I think it's.
Snink,
I think we
snink,
could.
schniggity, snink.
I think you could do any of them. I'm working on a badger because we have a lot of situations where we're digging up rats and we're just digging, and we're using shovels and our hands and the dogs, like all these inefficient tools to get to the rats. And sometimes you can't use a shovel. The type of soil might prevent you from using a shovel because you just end up burying the entrance to the den and you can't find it again, or it's a waste of time to find it again. So you end up down on your hands and knees, like every inch, trying not to fill in the hole, not backfill it on accident, or not backfill's the wrong word, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
And the dogs are digging. It's like, dude, this is so inefficient. Like badgers are made for this, but there's legal complications because they're not like mink, domestic in the eyes of law, domestic livestock. I've got to go through all kinds of stupid hoops, and I haven't yet gotten that through. But I'm working on it. And what species? I don't care. Honey or American are the only two that I really think would be excel at it. I think the European badger, they freaking eat worms. Like I'm not really thinking they're going to be the ideal. But honey badgers dig up a lot of rodents and reptiles. They're digging machines, and American badgers specialize in digging up freaking gophers and ground squirrels and prairie dogs. So the American badger would probably be the best. The only question I have though is the hibernation. That they don't do a true hibernation, but they have a torpid period where they kind of shut down. So it might be better to go with the tropical honey badger and not worry about that. I don't know. It's all in theory.
That's so cool.
I'm working on it. Active. Well, yeah, active. I'm actively working on it. If I can get either species legal, whichever first, I'm gonna go with it.
I would think you'd have better luck with the exotic.
Getting it legal, it would if I wasn't in Utah. Unfortunately, Utah is really dumb state to try and own a mammal that isn't like the run of the mill mammal. Birds, reptiles, you can get all kinds of stupid stuff. They don't care. But mammals, they're hyper obsessed with not letting you get mammals. But yeah, other states, they'd be like, oh, it's an exotic mammal. You can buy that at the pet store. Yeah, there's a lot of states you could buy a freaking honey badger at Kmart. They wouldn't care. That's smart. They wouldn't care. But Utah, unfortunately, is not.
That'd probably be Texas and South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
No, you'd be surprised. A lot of states, if it's not too big and not too wild, they don't really care. If it's non-native, it's non-native. Most states obsessively freak out if it's native. Oh, you can't own that shrew. It's a native. Oh, you're going to wipe them all into extinction by owning one as a pet. Oh, they're stupid about it. But exotics, they're like, oh, you want an exotic. Yeah. Whatever, we don't care.
What is the video of is that a martin or a fisher that's chasing the squirrel around the tree?
It could be either one. They both do it. I've got videos of in one of my videos. So if you're talking one of my videos, it's a fisher. I don't think I have a martin in one.
I don't think it's one of yours. I think it's a fully wild one. What do you got there, Kate?
Oh no, yeah. It's I've got a video about mustelids in general. That's why
really?
I said. And I just stole some footage and threw it on there. Is that a male? That's a female, right?
It's a fisher.
Yeah, it's a female fisher, right?
Casey's holding up a skin of a fisher.
I have no idea. I got it at a flea market. No, it was roadkill. I found it, and I was able to pull some strings and get it tanned legally with a tag. And it's a beautiful martin. The goshawk nemesis, they raid nests all the time and kill the parents. So it's pretty cool to actually have a pelt of an actual martin in my possession. And I love it.
It's a martin. It's not a fisher.
Dude, that's a good question. Probably a fisher actually, because it was in a northern state.
Well, let me see the color on it. I'm pretty sure it's a fisher. Well,
I think it's a fisher.
Technically, a fisher is a martin. It's a species of martin. It's a fisher. It's a fisher,
right?
So pine martins are more colorful.
This is not. This is very dark.
Yeah, fishers are that uniform grizzled dark. Yeah, it's a fisher.
This thing is every bit as big as a house cat. I mean, it's
and martins are more like a mink. Martins are like mink sized. Fishers are like cats.
Yeah, they're big. They call them fisher cats, don't they? Yeah.
They don't catch fish in another cat.
Do you now?
What is that? It's a fire squirrel. Fire squirrel? Does it go in fires? No. Is it related to squirrels? No. Why did you call it a fire squirrel? I don't know. Is it color of fire? No, he's white.
Audubon did it. Blame Audubon.
Yeah, Audubon. I hate that guy. Do you have now? Question for you. Do you have any? I mean, it's kind of a stupid, random question, but do you have any issues with people that trap mink? Does it bother you? Does it?
I hate trappers. Trappers are the worst guys in the world. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I've got quite a few buddies that are trappers. I actually have trappers who supply me meat, so we'll do a trade. I don't. I'm lazy now. I don't skin any of my own muskrats. I just freeze them whole. And beavers, if I kill a beaver, I just freeze them whole. And then when the trappers have a bunch of meat, I go take it to them and it's like, here, what's the value of this pelt? And they skin it and they give me the meat back. And I get the meat they give me. It's like, okay, we're going to charge you X, per carcass. Okay, this say that pelt's worth $5. Okay, $5 off of what you owe us. And then I take all of their muskrats and beavers that they trap, plus the ones I gave them that they skinned for me. I get them back for free. Obviously, I don't have to pay for them. Nice. And then I grind them up and turn them into mink food. The beavers I turn into dog food. I just feed whole. I just cut it, chunk off, give it to the dog. And then the muskrats I grind up with brown rats that the mink catch and squirrels and a few other things. So they've got some roughage with it. I grind it all up and put it into bags and I feed that to the mink. And then the dogs, they get the bigger stuff, like the beavers. And like, I also have a connection with the state and they go and catch, people here love to get like pet ducks and geese and stuff. And then they're like, oh, these things are dirty. And they turn them loose at the local ponds. So there's all these domestic ducks and geese. Well, the state will go in and round them up and catch them and they bring them to me.
Nice.
So I will freeze them and those are hard to process. Because like I said, I don't want the mink learning to break in. So they've got to eat nice little ground patties of food. So I give that to the dogs. They get the geese and the ducks and the hard to break down into a nice little ground patty stuff. The beaver bones, man. I broke so many grinders trying to grind beavers. I'm like, okay, this is stupid, dude. Let's just give them to the dogs. The dogs get the difficult process stuff and the mink get the easy to process stuff. And that's how I divide it. So like sheep, if I get a sheep or a goat or whatever, that's all goes to dog food. And then the little stuff that's easy to process goes to mink food. And that's how I do it.
Super cool. That's a good pro tip. I currently I'm currently feeding my goshawk on a beaver carcass as we speak. I just cut off a back leg and threw that in there. I have a shout out to Zach Bond. He gets me muskrat like by the pounds.
Yeah,
and it's better than quail.
It's a very underutilized thing.
So good, man.
So many trappers just chucking meat. So many falconers out there buying freaking stupid quail that are so damn expensive. It's like, ridiculous. Dude, you guys just need to hook up,
Yeah, that's what we did. So like my goshawk is eating on quail and muskrat, and the imprint, the new one that I got, is eating muskrat and quail, and then the one that's molting, she's eating muskrat and beaver. I mean, it's like perfectly beautiful, rich meat.
Oh, rich, beautiful. Not fatty though. It's red and dark, but it's not overly rich. It's good stuff. The only downside is it's messy. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, it's bloody. It makes a huge mess. But the other thing that I like, falcon related, is when it's frozen. It's not like quail where in like 35 minutes in the summer it starts getting real squishy and like kind of soft. The muskrat's like a rock. So I've been feeding it for years. I've never had to cope any of my birds' beaks, man. They're just gnawing on that thing all day, 90 degrees. And it's like a perfect, keeps the beak nice, keeps the talons nice. It's excellent.
They've got harder bones too.
The bones are harder. I do get a little nervous about the bones because they're pretty thick, but I try to cut everything up in sections that are easily, swallowable by the bird. But yeah, huge pro tip to falconers: stop buying quail and start hooking up with your
muskrats. Beaver, I think would be rough feed a bird of prey, but muskrats are freaking perfect as long as you don't have some micro. I mean, I wouldn't be feeding it very
No.
much to kestrels and sharpies and stuff like that. But if you've got, like Cooper's Hawk and up, awesome food. My falconer buddy who breeds used to buy it off of me before I started breeding mink. And what I would do is I would go buy all the muskrats and trade and all that stuff, the trade/buy all the muskrats from him. And I'd bring everything he caught and I would keep what I wanted and I'd give the rest to my falconry, not give, sell the rest to my falcon because I paid for it.
Yeah.
Sell the rest to my falconry buddy. And it was a great deal. And then I started breeding mink and I was like, I'm sorry, man, I got to cut you off. I need everything they're catching now. Because it used to be I didn't need that much meat. And I'd feed some to my dog and my mink. Now it's like, dude, I need every scrap I can get. I've got 15.
What are you doing with because it sounds like you're breeding mink every year and picking the ones that you like. What are you doing with the ones that don't make the cut?
It depends on what level they don't make the cut. If they're like, just barely below the line, then they're going to somebody who wants to hunt muskrats or brown rats or whatever. If they're like, man, these things are scared of stuff with teeth, then they're going to somebody who wants to try and fish with it or catch rabbits with it or have it just as a weird exotic pet. Most people, like I said, they end up weird exotic pet. Very few people actually pursue the hunting idea. They love the idea. They never end up.
Okay. And do you ever, so now if somebody wanted to buy one, how much are we talking?
So right now, years ago, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to set a price because I had a lot of people reaching out to me. I was like, you know what, I'm going to set a price that I feel like is enough of a ouch on your pocketbook that you're taking it seriously to some degree.
Right.
But it's cheap enough that everyone can afford it. There's no like high school kid who wants to do this and he just can't. And so I just set the price at it's between 300 and 500 depending on the meat.
Oh, okay.
And with inflation, I set that price years ago. I really should up it because now $300 is like nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But back when I said it, we didn't have 4 years under Biden, and money was worth a lot more than it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, the last 4 years, money's lost its value more than like 15 years before that. If you do the math, anyway. We don't need to get into politics, but regardless of the last 4 years, it's time. Enough time has passed. I probably should up the price.
I think
I'm not in it to make money. I have no goal to I'm going to go make money selling mink. I just don't want to give it to someone and have them be like, oh, this is hard, and they dump it.
Right? Yeah, they have to kind of take it seriously. That's a good idea. Now, thinking about talking about money, what do you do for a living?
This.
So you have a very, very, very successful YouTube channel. And then I believe you told me that you do you mentioned earlier contract work with killing rats and stuff. So that's your full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2000 and what was it? I started getting paid 2012. Actually, that was when I started getting paid in YouTube too. So both pest control and YouTube started paying me around 2012. And just little by little, it just accumulated more and more and more and more. And finally, at one point, I was looking at it and I was making double what I was making at my job. I was a financial advisor with Fidelity Investments, and I was making double what I was making at Fidelity, and I was just like, why am I still showing up?
Right.
So I finally just quit my job after a year of that, and because I didn't trust it, because most of this was YouTube. It wasn't like I was getting tons of rat jobs and making tons of money on that side. Yeah. It was mostly YouTube, and it was like, man, they're freaking finicky. I could tomorrow lose everything, or at least drop below what I need to live off of.
Yeah.
So I basically just saved money. Everything I made in YouTube, I just saved. I didn't spend it because I was already making an income at Fidelity. And then I went and bought a nice property, kept a bunch in savings, and went full time. And let me see, what year would it have been? It would have been about 5 years ago. Because it would have been 5 years ago. So whatever that was, 2019-ish, I guess.
Yeah.
and I went full time, and I've been full time ever since. And it's gone up, and it's come down, it's gone up, it's come down, and it's been a nice, comfortable income. And then right now, it's at an all time low, and it's like I need to start really pinching my pennies or looking for a job. So I'm pushing more right now to try and get more on the pest control side. Because before I really did, that was just a supplementary income.
Right.
Now it needs to become a more significant part. And I have contracts with canals and stuff now. I mean, I went out, had a $427, I think it was 27, 400 and something dollar day on the canal the other day. And I was like, man, this is a nice backup income. You know, because my YouTube, I used to make that much every day on YouTube or more. I mean, it just depended. I was making really good money, but now it's like, Jesus, it's squeaking by now. And it's not, the trajectory is not the direction you want it. So it's like, there's no limit to how low it can go.
Right. Everybody fantasizes about being a YouTuber and this and that. But yeah, I mean, you're at the whims of your audience. And if the views aren't coming in, you're not getting.
Well, it's worse than that. It's not just the whims of your audience. It's also the whims of the goofy fanatics who run YouTube.
True.
And they are the liberalist, most liberal, brainwashed, in a bubble, clueless about the rest of the world people on the planet. There is no one more brainwashed and clueless than freaking people living in California.
Right.
You cannot get more ignorant, clueless, and weird than people living in not just California. California is a varied state.
Yeah.
The freaking San Franciscos of the world and LAs of the world, they do not comprehend living on a farm in Iowa or living anywhere outside their super, super excluded.
Yeah, I get it. I get it a lot where people are just they're so like, I don't want to use the word triggered because it's so overplayed, but it's like they're so like enraged that I would go out and catch
a little bunny,
catch rabbits with my bird, and then make a beautiful risotto for my family. Like, you should go to the store and buy your food. How dare you go out and actually kill your own food? That's a disgrace. I'm like, it's just people really do nowadays live in a bubble where they're so disconnected from the reality of the world that
even farmers and hunters, the most like close to the down to earth.
Yeah.
You know what they do when they freaking shoot ducks? Slice off the breast and chuck the whole fetching duck. I know because I get those ducks. And I use them, put them to good use.
Exactly.
You know what the farmers do? They go to the store and buy corn, and they've got a whole fetching field of it. Why aren't you eating your own damn corn? Oh, no. Why aren't you eating your own beef? Oh, I don't know. Like, you got a cow. You just freaking took it to the market, and you went to the store and bought hamburger. What the freak is wrong with the world we live in? Like, even the people who are, quote unquote, down to earth, the farmers and the hunters, they're not even freaking like, I shot a deer the other day. Oh, really? Yeah. Took it to the butcher, and he butchered it for me. You didn't even process your own deer? Like, what the freak?
They're busy, man. They're busy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the people who are down to earth. How can we even blame those poor bubbleized, bubble wrap people in California? How can we demonize them when our own hunters and farmers don't eat their own tomatoes? What are you? I'm a tomato farmer. Well, where'd you get that tomato in your fridge? I bought it at Macy's. You know, like
yeah.
No, I'm not even joking. I know farmers that don't eat their own damn potatoes, and they've got fields of them.
Yeah,
like,
crazy.
Why are you buying potatoes?
Yeah,
I don't know. You know,
yeah. They're all trying to put all the food, all the meat and produce that we get from the grocery store is all laced to give us cancer, so that big pharma can profit off of trying to maintain our symptoms.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
That's enough conspiracy theories.
All right. Joseph, it's been a pleasure. This is a record length podcast. A lot of good information, a lot of good rants.
It was excellent.
We really appreciate you coming on.
It's dangerous. You'll see why I don't have a podcast. Like,
you should. Maybe you should start a podcast.
I've thought about it, and I've thought about doing. I'm scared of what I say, and then I come and do it on your guys's. But like,
all right,
you guys notice I'm very loose. Like, blah blah blah. Like, I say stupid things sometimes. oh, those
So do
freaking
we.
like. I'll have some opinion about some breed of dog, and I'll go off, and then afterwards, I'm like, why did I say that? That was really rude. I shouldn't have
Yeah.
said that. But during the moment, doesn't even cross my mind. I'm just like flapping my lips, saying all these rude things. It's like, and afterwards, I'll reflect and be like, that was really rude. You didn't need to say any of that.
Yeah.
Let them have their whatever it is they like, and you don't. Just let them be. Just shut up, Joe.
I'm
That's why
guilty.
I don't.
I'm guilty of the same thing, Joseph. And me and you have gotten into it about dachshunds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
exactly.
I do apologize because I get heated myself. So I'm in the same boat with you.
Yeah.
So Joseph, obviously you're a YouTuber. Where else can people find you?
So I have my YouTube channel. That's my main thing. I also have some private channels. So it's really just my exclusive club now. I do have an old shell of a club that gets the same videos, but I don't recommend it because the platform just sucks. But I have what I call my exclusive club, and that's all the stuff I can't put on YouTube, plus a bunch of just like extra stuff that I choose not to put on YouTube because I don't. The videos never really take off. So I've got a bunch of little training and like day-to-day life kind of videos. Really not that exciting, but hey, you want more detail on how I train a mink or dog? Here they are. But then there's stuff it's like, yeah, here's my dog catching a raccoon and head breaking loose, and there's no way I could put that on YouTube. And here's me spearing a beaver through the heart. Can't put that on YouTube.
I want to see that. How do we watch those?
So they're my exclusive club. Every video on YouTube, there's a link below, and you click on it, and it takes you to the club. And those are because I don't get any ad revenue at all. Those are a paid subscription. So you pay per month, and you get full access to all the videos. You can go on for a month and just binge and then cut it off, or you can become a member and then or stay a member, I should say, and then you get it for as long as you want. But yeah, I've got some of the stuff is like. This guy's putting it on videos, and that's part of it is, even if YouTube allowed me to show it, I wouldn't because I don't want that many people seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right? It's true.
So I do put stuff on there that I wouldn't, even if YouTube let me put on YouTube. But even then, it's all edited. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're a real hunter and you're like, wow, those raccoons die really fast. Yeah, it's still edited. I'm not going to show. I try to keep it as appropriate as I can while still keeping it. It's like National Geographic when that lion catches the gazelle, you get to see the chase, you get the catch, you see some of the struggle, and then the lion's eating the kill. You don't get the 30 minutes of the gazelle.
Right. Yeah, there's still. I do see those videos on those very popular pages, though. So
yeah, but they're not on back when they had TV. So my videos aren't that heavily edited, and raccoons don't take a half hour to die. I'm just saying, like, I'm using that as an extreme example. I do keep it. PG-13. I don't get into the R.
It also depends on what dog you're using to kill the raccoon.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's for every dog.
Yeah, right.
All right.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's my exclusive club. Click on that, and like I said, it's more of an inside look. So some of it's just maybe even boring to you. You're like, how you feed the mink or whatever, And then some of the stuff is like, oh, I see why this is not on YouTube. Yeah.
And I see that you're wearing the Mink Man shirt. You have some merch that you sell. Can people get that on your page on your channel?
Yeah. So also any video, you click on the description below, and that'll pop up for merch. And you can get my book. You can get shirts, hats, sweatshirts, things like that.
Awesome. Good. Go support Joseph. And he's doing something super unique that almost nobody in the world is doing except for a handful of people. So if you're inclined, go give him a follow. I follow him. I love his content. I've been watching his stuff for years and years and years. So it's so cool to have him on and talk to him. But yeah, go show him some support and follow him.